familiar with other dam removal and river restoration projects. You might even want to include a member of the younger generation because they're going to have to live for decades with whatever the town decides. So thank you for listening to these comments and suggestions, and I hope we do get this advisory committee going.
Thank you, Ray. Anybody else want to speak to a non-agenda item? Not seeing it. Mark?
Can I just
You want to get Allison first? I got something else to talk about.
briefly say that the live stream didn't, for anybody that's watching now, the live stream should be going, but it was a technical problem, so they missed the first public comment.
Okay.
Was missed, and I'm getting a barrage of questions about that.
We can post that on.
There won't be any way to post it because it also wasn't being recorded.
Then I would recommend they speak again.
Tony, would you come and reread your missive, please?
Thank you, and I'm sorry to bore the audience as well as the select board with having to do this again, but it was written out so I can read it to you again. My name is Tony Grassi. I'm a resident of Camden, 363 Belfast Road, and I'm here on behalf of Restore McGonagall, a community group that supports open, transparent discussion of the river's future. In just 4 weeks, our volunteers collected signatures from 510 Camden voters on a petition to, quote, improve river water quality, reduce flood risk, and facilitate fish passage, including removal of the Montgomery Dam. I want to publicly thank the 18 people who braved very cold weather and circulated our petition. We have no doubt that additional voters would have signed if the petition drive had continued, but there is no reason since we had already reached the 331 required signatures. Many people were happy to sign our petition without a lot of questions. They agreed that the town should remove all the derelict structures in the river, including the Montgomery Dam, and get on with addressing the impacts of climate change. Other people signed because they wanted more information about flooding, dam removal, fish passage, the potential impact on Harbor Park, and what the waterfall would look like. We told them that they were unlikely to get that information unless our petition was filed. As you know, another group wants a quick vote in June. This would effectively close off public discussion of major issues raised by looking at the whole river. Nobody we talked to said shutting off discussion was a good idea. Once again, we strongly urge the Select Board to appoint a Citizens Advisory Committee that would lead a broader public engagement effort. The committee should include community leaders who are committed to an open, unbiased, transparent process. It will provide a forum for any resident to question scientists and experts about hydrology, engineering, ecology, historical preservation, and anything else that comes to their minds. And its recommendations should be taken into account by any plan that is ultimately submitted to the Camden voters. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Thanks again. Mark, do you have a quick comment you wanted to make?
They should.
No, but they heard that part.
They did hear that.
The
They heard
part.
both
Yep.
the second one.
Yep.
Allison?
Yes, so the
Yes.
original, some people are still attempting to watch on the original scheduled live stream,
Okay.
and they need to go
To the new live
to
stream.
the new live stream.
Okay, so the second one was, I want to make sure.
Verify that Ray's got posted?
I just want to make sure that they both get heard.
Yeah, let's,
I think it. Let's.
I will.
We'll verify. We'll come
Yeah,
back to
it's,
it.
no, it's, I can.
If we didn't, we'll come back to it. Mark, let's keep moving.
Usually, I do want to have something to say that's not on the agenda. Usually, I save everything for my select board report at the end of the meeting, but I think this is important, and I wanted to bring it up now. As everybody knows, we have had there are tremendous cost increases for citizens in gasoline, in electricity, and heating oil. And so much so that it may be a really hardship for a lot more people than normal. And I wanted to make sure that everyone in Camden knows that we have funds provided by a trust that will help pay for people's heating oil and electric bills if they need help. And I want everybody to know that. If you feel that you need help, you can't get those bills. And I've heard that the electric company is actually pursuing suing people much sooner than they used to. That was heard that on NPR this morning. Then you want to call Janice in the town office. Her phone number is 236-3353. Her extension is 7101. And talk to her. She will get you an application you can fill out, and we can provide assistance. And the one thing about this that I want everybody to understand is these are trust funds that were donated to the town many years ago, set up for specifically this purpose. They're not coming out of tax monies. So just real important, please, if you need help, please reach out and ask us.
Thank you, Mark. What
I'm
happened?
sorry to do this, but I think we should just, I can see clearly that Ray, I rewound the live stream, but I don't know where it seems to have started.
Want to redo, Ray?
I was just going to click play real quick and see where it started. It doesn't appear to have been the exact beginning, though, so let's
Have them do it again.
Let's roll through a few
just
things
in the
here while she's
interest of-
checking. Please check where it left off, and we'll take action from there. Ray, don't leave yet, please.
Okay, we're about to answer the question conclusively.
Yeah, okay. Can you,
Restoration with different options, and what's its
Eh,
yeah, Ray
It's
is
midway through.
midway through, Ray. Midway through. It got you midway through.
I think it's important that they go
So-
again.
Ray, do you want to read it again?
Can I go with my other speech?
Yes, you can. Or you can dance if you'd like.
No, I'm glad you asked that because it looks like
That's
we
fine.
did miss a little clip
That's
at the
fine.
beginning.
Are we live now, though?
Yes, you are.
I really, really believe
We know,
so.
the only thing we know is you're alive. Thank you. Go.
All right. Ray Andreessen, Cove Road, Camden. I would like to publicly thank Tony Grassi for recently recommending that the Select Board appoint a Citizens Advisory Committee to help guide the so-called restoration of the McGonagall River currently being contemplated by the town of Camden. As you're well aware, some members of the Save the Dam Falls Committee began advocating for this type of citizen input more than 9 months ago. One of our original goals was to make sure that the Montgomery Dam would not be destroyed without a public discussion. So yes, we totally support the idea of an advisory committee because we believe it will include a broad spectrum of Camden citizens, not just advocates of one position or the other. And yes, we would gladly participate in any public hearing and hope that those of us who want to preserve Montgomery Dam have a seat at the table on this advisory committee. And I dare say, if the town had created such a committee last year and opened it for public participation and input, maybe we would not have had to resort to a petition drive to put Saving Montgomery Dam on the ballot this year. Nor would Mr. Grassi and friends have had to counteract with an opposing petition, which I'm sure will make for a lot of confusion among the electorate. As for the Citizens Advisory Committee, I hope the Select Board will do the following 3 things. 1, start it now, before the June ballot, so the committee can hold public meetings and help educate the voters of Camden regarding what's involved with river restoration, the different options, and what's at stake for everyone, especially those who live and work next to the river. Include a diverse group of citizens on the advisory committee, including representatives of the 2 petitioners, a member of the Library Board of Trustees, a sport fisherman or fisheries expert, someone who owns a home next to the river behind the Knowlton Street Dam that might be affected by its removal, someone from the Downtown Business Group, and someone familiar with other dam removal and restoration projects. You might also want to include a member of the younger generation who will be living with whatever decisions are made about the river for decades to come. And 3, have this advisory group work with a consultant being hired by the town manager, but have the advisory group report independently and regularly to the Select Board with unfiltered comments and concerns expressed by its members and the public at large. Thank you for listening to these comments and suggestions, and I sincerely hope you will act on them as soon as possible.
Thank you, Ray. Again,
Again?
Thank you. On to our second item on agenda, which is the approval of the board, select board meeting minutes for March 1st, 2022. Mark?
I have no comments, additional comments about the board minutes, so I'll make a motion that we approve the board minutes for March 1st, 2022.
I second.
Motion made and second. Comments? No comments. All those in favor? 4-0. Thank you very much. On to,
Could I say something
Yeah,
really,
for sure.
just briefly about the public input? For anybody that's watching and curious about what public input has happened, a good amount of that is available on the town website. There were, last year when we were midway through as part of the National Coastal Resilience Fund grant and study, we held 3 very broad public input sessions on Zoom that were fairly well attended. They're available on YouTube. There were a lot of good comments. The idea of that was nothing at all is off limits. Anything connected to the watershed, the dams, any of them. Subsequently, as part of the Coastal Communities Grant, we held 3 public input sessions on what designs could look like and priorities for full or partial removal of the Montgomery Dam. So there's a lot of stuff on the website, and I think having anybody review that will just add to the subsequent conversations that we can all have. So.
thank you. We're going to move on to item 3, which is a public hearing on a number of matters. I mentioned earlier when we entered this select board meeting that I'm going to explain the public hearing process. It's very important to understand that, especially because we're working on a hybrid. And that's specifically that the public hearing is specifically for the select board to solicit input from the public on the matters at hand. I will, and when we start, I will ask each of the items or collectively, anybody from the public who would like to speak to, for, against, or just speak to the matters at hand. To those on Zoom, I would admonish again that please, we be preferred if you raise your hand and want to make a statement. It's preferred because you can identify yourself and speak and ask questions. Once everybody from the public has had an opportunity to speak, the public session will be closed, and I will revert to select board discussion. Again, it's very important to understand that when I do close the public comment, there will be no more input from the public unless a select board member has a question of somebody who previously has spoken. So it's where I try to caution, because I'm sure a lot of people may want to speak to these items, and that's great. I ask you to be courteous, try to keep your comments to a limited time. But please be, candid and bring us your pros, cons, or just your feelings about these items. Like I said, then we'll take one. Well, we'll take these. May take these in a batch, but the first one we have to address is the charter amendments, which are specifically written to provide for using secret ballot voting pursuant to 30A MRS. Squiggly sign 2528 for adoption of the annual budget. Just the background. Again, this is basically a follow on, which will go in the ballot, obviously, for the public to vote on to physically change the charter to reflect putting the ballot as we have for the past few years because of COVID, principally, to put the budget on the ballot and the paper ballot in June every year. So with that, I'd like to open up any comments that the public has on charter amendments. Yes, Deborah.
Good evening. I'm Deb Dodge, and I live on Arbor Way here in Camden, and I have a few comments. I'm going to start out with something. As Leonard Lookner was very fond of saying, our town meeting form of government, and especially the open town meeting, is a very pure form of participatory democracy. But to succeed, we all need to be informed and both willing and able to participate. While the open town meeting is a revered and very direct method of participation, it no longer generates a wide participation by the town voters. And the straw poll taken in November clearly showed an overwhelming preference for approving the budget by secret ballot. While a vote by secret ballot is not the same as being able to have a final discussion and potentially amend the budget in person, as we can in an open June town meeting, this proposed charter amendment does ensure that we have ample opportunity to become informed, ask questions, and debate any item in the budget before the June vote. That opportunity is guaranteed by the requirement for a public hearing before the Select Board finalizes their budget recommendations for the ballot, and the fact that all Budget Committee meetings are open to the public, and the Select Board is required to hold a public information meeting prior to the election to inform citizens about the final vote before the June vote. There are a couple of other positive and important elements I'd like to mention. There's language to allow flexibility in how the budget warrant articles are constructed and presented. This is important because should there be a budget item that warrants special attention for whatever reason, whether because it is an unusual expense or a highly debated expense, the Select Board may list it as a separate warrant article. A negative vote on that does not mean that a total budget category would be defeated. Or should our financial reporting require a change to the typical budget categories that are listed, there's no need to change our charter. In the past 2 years, due to the pandemic, we have voted only on the grand total number for our budget by secret ballot. However, the amendment proposes that citizens will vote on each major budget category just as if we'd been able to do an open town meeting. I think this comes as close as you can to replicating our traditional approval process, allowing the voters a more significant and detailed say in the town's final budget. And personally, voting by budget category rather than a grand total feels less like my vote is a rubber stamp. If there had been no pandemic, the change to secret ballot budget approval would feel like a bigger change than it does now. I would like to think that what we may lose in tradition, we gain in a wider representation and participation in the budget approval process. I think these are reasonable changes to our charter, and I support your placing them on the warrant for a vote in June. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. You want to ask a question?
No, again, I've been working on this topic with Deb, and I just want to thank her for her support and help shepherding through these changes. And tonight, your support is really important to us as well. So thank you, Deb.
Absolutely. Anybody else would like to speak for or against, just speak to this potential warrant item to go on the ballot? I'm not seeing any hands. I'm going to close the public portion of this and revert, and I don't see any questions online. So revert to the Select Board for deliberation. Oh, yes.
So I would also want to make a similar comment about Deb. That almost made me cry, just listening to how well articulated it is, because especially from somebody that has mastered the town meeting form of government. I mean, you really have, and you do it so well and so politely and so just in the best way that anybody could. And so to see somebody go through that process of knowing our system so well, but then also being able to see, well, maybe we need a little bit of a change now. And there's no way we could have gotten here without you. And I just immensely appreciate all the time that you spent just crafting the language and doing all these things that really, we don't have volunteers that do this kind of stuff anymore. So thank you very much.
Hear, hear. Thank you, Deb. Any other questions?
I would love to make Deb blush even more, but I also want to thank all the people on the Charter Commission, because they met during COVID for 2 years working on the whole Charter Commission changes and updates. They did an amazing job, and they protected our rights, but at the same time opened it up to more people, which is a really difficult thing to do, and I think they've done an excellent job.
Any comments on the charter amendment language that we're here to approve today? Do I have a motion to approve it?
I'll make a motion that we approve the charter amendments. Is there a specific name for it? Charter amendments to provide for using secret ballot voting pursuant to 30-A MRS, squiggly, as Bob mentioned, 2528 for adoption of the annual budget.
I second.
Bill,
I don't mean to take your thunder, Mark, but,
thought you would.
well, there's a draft order, and perhaps the easiest thing, it's pretty short, but the statute requires this to be an order and not just a motion.
Oh, okay.
So if I could read it and then somebody say so moved.
Yeah, just to clarify, the charter, any charter amendment has a very strict process, not the least of which is why we're having this tonight, and why we're having a special select board meeting on Monday, because within 7 days we have to quote unquote have the approval. But please, Bill, let's correct us on this motion or order.
Yeah, I think this will be for signature later, but it simply says Order of Camden Select Board, whereas the voters of the town of Camden have by straw poll endorsed a charter amendment to provide for using secret ballot voting pursuant to 30A MRS Section 2528 for adoption of the annual budget, whereas the Select Board has prepared draft language, published notice, and conducted a hearing in compliance with the charter amendment statute as found in 30A MRS Section 2104, and be it resolved, the Select Board hereby orders that the final form of the proposed amendment to the Camden Charter as attached hereto in Schedule A shall be placed as a warrant article before the voters for approval at the June 14, 2022 annual town meeting.
So moved.
Nice.
Mark said.
You don't want to repeat it?
I second. I was going to move it because he was my baby, but
I was waiting.
I second. That's okay.
Second there. To see
I
if
second.
we can change.
It's all good. All good.
Are there any further discussion on the order at hand? All those in favor? 4-0. Thank you very much. The next, actually, we have a number of Camden zoning ordinance proposed changes. Perhaps the best way to start this one out, Jeremy, is some of these are related. Could you kind of connect the dots a little bit, then we can go to public comment.
Sure. Alice, I don't know if you want to share the screen of.
I was just about to ask Bob if he would like me to share my screen.
Would you show your screen?
I have to.
Thank you. The way we'll do this, I think, Bob, is to look at, from the select board agenda, look at 3B, 3C, and 3G first. And then we'll get to the residential zoning pieces.
3BCG?
Yeah. That's all right.
And
It kind of goes along with the memo that I wrote, not with the agenda.
well, and explain why those.
I'll explain it. Yep. All right. The first one, proposed amendment, and I will say the planning board over the course of many months held a number of workshops on these changes and then held a required public hearing, and all of these proposed amendments made it through the planning board process. There was some discussion about some of them that some people had some issues with, but in the end, everyone voted in favor of sending these to you folks with the recommendation that they go to voters in June. The first one would be to amend Article 3 definition, and this was something that came up while I was dealing with a specific issue, and it was a shoreline zone and relating issue. We have a use, and I think it's a relic from pre-shoreline zoning, to be honest with you. We have a definition of cottage in our zoning ordinance, and we have that use allowed in 4 different zones. That would be the village extension, the village, the RU1, RU2, not the village, sorry, but village extension, RU1, RU2, and the CR. And it's really a repetitive.
Jeremy, sorry,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
RU and CR,
RU is the rural residential 1.
okay, and
RU2 is rural residential 2, and we have a zoning map in the packet
Okay.
2. Village extension is our designated growth area. It kind of sits beyond the village before you get to the rural residential zones.
Okay, so it's like-
And CR is coastal residential, and that's going up Belfast Road and going down Bayview and Chestnut.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm not familiar with those acronyms.
No problem at all.
Thank you.
So,
People aren't.
as we were going through, as I was dealing with a specific issue, I looked at the definition of cottage, and we chatted with the planning board about it. Cottage is already, again, I think it's a relic from prior to shoreline zoning, which is mandated by the state. We have a definition for dwelling unit, which is the same as a cottage, and I think it creates a fair amount of confusion. It created it for me in dealing with a specific issue. And the planning board said, let's just clean up this ordinance every chance we get, we should clean this ordinance up. So the proposal is to delete that definition, keeping in mind that dwelling units seasonally, which cottages are still allowed. We're just getting rid of a redundant definition and removing it from 4 references as uses that are allowed in the ordinance. Again, those uses are already allowed as a dwelling unit, which can be seasonal. That's the only difference between a cottage and a regular dwelling unit is that it's seasonal. So that is the first proposed change. The other,
No hidden consequences to
there
this.
are
that-
none. I
Suspicious, but,
no, I don't
Tell
believe
us
there's
if there was something-
any.
We're going to get to his
Yeah.
question. I want the public to go if they have any
And
questions.
then the other 2 are really kind of, again, clean or fix ordinance issues. The DEP, and these are shoreline zoning related. The state legislature passed a bill, and it needs to get implemented through Chapter 1000, which is the state's mandatory minimum shoreline zoning standards. And those are guidelines that the municipality must implement. We can go stricter, but we cannot be less strict. They adopted a law that requires photographic record of work that is done within the shoreline zone. So, Allison, if you could zoom to or go to that change, if you have it there. You do have it somewhere there. And this will require photographs.
I thought I was here.
No, you're
You're just in my memo,
on the
kind
memo,
of.
he's
Yeah.
on the,
If you get to the actual language.
Want me to go to the agenda?
Well, there's no correlation between the two. And we were looking at B, C, and G, those definitions. This is his memo. I don't know what we can ask Jeremy, is one of these relevant to
This is
G?
the summarized version?
Yeah.
They're my summarized versions. You have in there, you have the language. So I was just trying
If we
to,
could get to
Give me like a
the,
page number or something. or-
I don't know the page number.
Want the table?
It's
In the
page
packet.
11,
yeah.
31.
Page 11. No, I'm pretty sure
No,
that's where I
no,
was.
21.
That's where she was.
21.
That's where she is.
That's where I thought too, but
The issue, I'm trying to stay on the agenda, the language, then we can refer back to this. I think we should put the agenda up so we know we're talking about B, C, and G.
Oh, okay.
see that just here? You read this?
It's one of these, Allison. There's a handful of them. So it's 3. I don't know the order that they got into
I
the
don't know.
packet.
I don't know the order.
I mean, if you don't know, then how are you, I
Well,
don't,
it's on the agenda in order. In
The order
terms
is
of
on
what
the
he's
agenda,
speaking to and the subject matter, that's what we have to be approved. We should go to the agenda.
It's
They're talking
number
about-
C, it's
Yeah, it's not on the agenda, that's
it's
correct.
3C on the agenda.
And it's
Okay.
3C in
you
our,
want me to go to the agenda?
Please, would you?
I don't know if that's what Jeremy was
Yeah,
asking.
keep
but-
going, John.
isn't exactly what I was saying.
He was talking.
However,
Full,
I wanted the language to show you, because all this says, this summarizes it, and it requires the town, someone to submit photographic record.
Right.
That's what
did
it
it
does.
say that in a different way than where I was showing you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, then you have to tell us which one relates to which.
Yeah, if you could zoom in there.
Zoom in?
Again, they got, I don't know,
Actually means zoom,
the order got mixed up in the packet, so
all right. I mean, I'd seen
I have it.
photographic record.
I
Is it
can
really?
read it to the record if you'd like it. This would be 3C in there. I don't know what happened to it in your packet there.
It should be,
So if you look at the top of the packet, they're all there.
I think it was the highlighted one that was blue. Go up. Sorry, it might be 19 there, Allison. Nope. I don't know. The maps got in there funky. There it is.
there it is.
All right. So this is a new section in our shoreline zoning ordinance, Section 5, and we're required to renumber. This says that all applicants for a permit or for any applicable development within the shoreline zone must submit to the code officer pre-construction photographs along with any required applicable permit applications, supporting materials, along with any requisite fees, and shall submit no later than 20 days after completion of the permitted project or development post-construction photographs of the shoreline vegetation and development site. That is the language that came from the state, and I shared this with the state. The state is happy with this language. Again, it's verbatim on what they want. We cannot not have this in our ordinance. It is required by state law.
Okay.
That's what that does. The next one is another shoreland zoning amendment, and this is 3G. Allison, it would be after the map, so it would be page 20.
No.
There you go. and
3D,
this-
that's 3D. Did you mean to say 3D?
See 3D up top?
I thought you said G.
You said G.
Sorry.
Your G's on the agenda.
Yeah. Three, again, Bob's right there. So this amends the shoreline zoning minimum standards for multiple structures. And we ran into an issue where someone was looking to demo a house, build a brand new house, and build 4 dwelling units all within the shoreline zone, and they did not meet any of the requirements of shoreline zoning for development criteria within the shoreline zone. So what this does is, and again, this was shared with the DEP to clarify our language, for the purposes of non-conforming lots. Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. This is 3G. It looks just like it. Sorry, you have to go to 3G, Allison.
It's page 24.
Page 24.
Okay.
And I don't know why the map's got in, yeah, the next one. It's going to be 25. There you go. When determining what, and we're just keeping the same language and we're adding one sentence, when determining whether dimensional requirements are met, only land area within the shoreline zone shall be considered. And again, this is, under state shoreline zoning, you cannot have multiple structures in the shoreline zone unless you have the area that's required per dwelling unit and the shore frontage that's required per dwelling unit. And I had actually a developer from out of state that was really pushing this issue based on our ordinance, and said the ordinance isn't right, isn't clear, and you need to side with me, in favor of me. And I said, well, you know, there's a DEP requirement that we can't be less strict than. And I shared it with DEP. DEP had concerns, and this is the language that DEP would like in our ordinance, and I would like in the ordinance to clarify that situation. And that's all this does. It says that we have to look at the area within the shoreline zone to determine the lot area and the shore frontage requirements to add multiple structures in the shoreline zone.
Now, was this to resolve the issue? Did this make it so that the house could in fact be demoed and replaced with 4 of them, or?
No, this was done so you cannot do that.
Okay, that wasn't totally clear to me.
Let me, good questions. I have a couple of questions too, but
Yep.
first, those 3 items, they're kind of linked to relative changes. Does anybody in the public want to comment on any one of those 3, which related to the DEP requirement of photographic, and then this last one, which is the definition of the land dimensions being the shoreline zone?
Yeah.
There's no public input. I'm going to close the public on those 3, and then let's talk select board and revert to a select board decision on each of these, or all 3 of these?
Each of them, I think you need to do separately. I will say that there was no comment from the public at all through the planning board process either.
Right.
On these 3.
I guess my question to the latter one, which is, it sounds simple, but I'm not sure I get it. When determining the dimensional requirements of a specific property, that they're only, I don't understand the only.
So here's the situation. If you have a lot that, say, is 6 acres.
Yep.
And this is the case that I was dealing with. It was a 6-acre lot. And they only had, I believe, 290 feet of frontage along the ocean. They wanted to put 4 dwelling units down within the shoreline zone, which is prohibited under state ordinance, state law.
Oh, I see.
Unless you have the area, which would be 60, I think in this case it was 60,000 square feet times 4, plus the shore frontage requirement of, I believe it was 200 times 4, so you would need, 800 feet of shore frontage, plus, what is that, 240,000 square feet of area within the shoreline zone to get 4 houses in the shoreline zone.
Right.
Alternatively, and I said, we can't do it, and he's like, well, the ordinance doesn't really prohibit me, and I said, well, state standard does.
Right.
And we're going to fix
Yeah,
this
that makes
issue.
sense.
He does have 6 acres. I said, you can
Not on a
put,
shoreline, but not on the.
put your smaller houses up outside the shoreline zone, and it's not going to be a problem.
That makes sense.
He was fighting me on it, and I said, well, we're having a public hearing on this with the planning board, and we're going to move it forward. And I haven't heard from him since, and so this will resolve that issue.
Okay. Any more questions on that one?
No, that's a good clarification. Thank you.
Very good. Yeah, I needed that.
We needed it too, thanks.
Are there any questions on the other 2, which is the language for the DEP requirements regarding, well, the first one was the definition of cottage and a clarification there, and the second one was the DEP requirement for photographic record. Any questions on any of those?
No.
Okay. I want, Allison, go ahead. I'm sorry. My back was to you again.
Whoops. So I'm excited by this. I'm wondering if there's just a better way to implement it, or maybe the town could do this additionally, because it comes up so frequently that vegetation is cut in the shoreland zone, or right along the shore. And I find too often that it's, somebody having to go back to some photograph that they may have taken to compare. And with so many properties changing hands, it's hard to know whether the pre-development photos are really taken at the very beginning. For instance, this last project that just came up. And so is there any requirement to, it's just taking people at their word, basically.
Yeah,
That they're
I
going
guess-
to take pictures before any trees are cut down and not
Yeah,
afterward.
I will
or-
say, we are doing, I think, a pretty good job now of meeting property owners or designers on site to look at the situation or the issue right now. So from my perspective, the photographs are very helpful, but it's nothing like being there in person and seeing the site before they're, wanting to develop it. This is a requirement. We have to do it.
Oh, no, I'm supportive, but anyway, it just in general, if the town were to go, if some entity were to go around and just take pictures of the shoreline every year, that would be a helpful
Oh, gosh, yes.
tool, because a lot of the time, they don't end up calling to get
for
consultation until after they've already begun the project.
For sure. When I worked over in the Cobbessee watershed area, other side of Augusta, and 21 lakes over there were lake associations that would routinely do shoreline surveys, video the whole shore every year, and they would compare them year to year and reach out to us if they ever found any issues. So it's not a bad idea. I know the Megunticook watershed, I met with the new executive director the other day. He came in about a project that was maybe going to the zoning board. And he and I had a conversation about similar things as this. So I think there's some interest in the association to do those kinds of things. I'm just
Maybe we
throwing
could
that out
task the
there.
Conservation Commission with it or something.
It might be a good idea.
Are there any other
Using a
questions?
drone is
Are there any other questions to any of these three? I'd like to take a motion to each one, please, so that we can pass the B. We're just talking to, on the agenda, B, C, and G.
Correct.
First off, I'd like to offer a motion for Camden zoning ordinance amend Article 3 definitions to remove the definition of cottage. Is that enough, or do you need more from that?
Articles,
The what? Would you say, Jeremy?
I would say to
Well, if-
delete the definition and to.
You should read the whole, just read the whole thing.
To remove the definition of cottage and deletes the 4 references to the use within the ordinance. A cottage is a dwelling unit limited to seasonal occupancy. However, seasonal dwelling units are already permitted within the definition of dwelling unit, and retaining this redundant definition creates confusion. I'm taking that off the beginning of the.
Correct, off the agenda.
I second.
Motion made in second discussion. Those in favor? 4-0. Item C,
I'd like
please.
make a motion for Camden zoning ordinance amend Article 5, administration and enforcement, new Section 5, and renumber to ensure that the town is in compliance with 38 MRS Section 439-A, parentheses 10, and the new DEP requirements contained in Chapter 1000 to require a photographic record of certain work done within the shoreland zone.
I second.
Discussion. All's in favor? 4-0. Thank you very much. And then to G, please.
And make a motion to approve Camden zoning ordinance amend Article 10, Part 1, Section 1, standards in the shoreland area overlay, parentheses 9, lots and structures. This amendment will ensure that the town zoning ordinance is consistent with the Maine Department of Environmental Protection's mandatory shoreland zoning ordinance requirements contained in Chapter 1000.
I second.
Motion made in second. All's in favor? 4-0. Thank you. Jeremy, that brings us to the remaining 3 items here in this public hearing, which are D, E, and F, correct?
Yep.
So why don't you give us a little intro, then I'm going to turn to public for comment, and then as the usual procedure.
Sure, Allison, if you want to get to those again, if you can.
D is on page 20.
Thank you, sir.
And so, and I want to just mention too, that starts there is perfect. One of your goals has been to look at, the select board's goals has been to look at housing availability and affordability. That's been a significant issue in town, and in the mid-coast. I mean, really from Bar Harbor to Kittery. And the comp plan, I also included for you some comp plan notes, or at least references from the quotes from the comp plan that address or look to the town to start looking at how to address housing availability and affordability. It's kind of all over the comp plan to look at housing and the impacts of housing on economic development, on a wide range of things. So, Planning Board and I started looking at this. One of the ways to do this is to address reduced lot size requirements and increased density. When we started looking at the village district, and I have the map there too, which would be 19. That one is, yep, there you go. This is the village zone. The gray is the shoreland zone running along the river. The light gray on Elm Street is B3. But everything else is, you've got, there is the village. And the lot sizes range from less than 10,000 square feet, and you can see I put them in a range here, less than 10,000, 10,000 to 1499, 15,000 to 22,499, and 22,500 and greater. There's some reason behind that. Our current minimum lot size, and I guess we'll start with, Bob, it's a little confusing, but we'll start with the village rather than that one that Allison you started with, because you'll understand once I get there. In the village zone, the minimum lot size currently is 10,000 square feet.
What do you want me to change?
Sure. Yep, go to a
That's actually
different
F.
view and I can see
It's
it.
F. On the agenda, it's F.
Yeah.
You're talking about the village,
Yes, F,
village, not
please.
VE.
Yep.
He's talking the village, it's F.
Village.
Page 23.
That proposal just to be, is going from, the village from 7,500 per unit square feet to 5,000.
There we go. Thank you. And what this does, again, the minimum lot size is currently 10,000 square feet. We are not proposing, the ordinance amendment does not propose to change that. What it does propose to change is to not require any increase in lot area for a second dwelling unit in that building or in that home. Currently, you would need 15,000 square feet to have a two-family home. What the proposal now is to say is that there's no increase in lot area required to add a second family dwelling.
Within an existing building?
Within an existing structure, correct. And I will say this still applies to properties. If you go to the non-conforming section, which was the first one we started looking at before we got here, you can, a non-conforming use is on a non-conforming lot, you can have a non-conforming lot, so a lot less than 10,000 square feet. We wouldn't allow someone to add a second unit normally in there unless they had 15,000 square feet. What we're proposing is to, on lots of even less than 10,000 square feet, the nonconformity section says that adding a second dwelling unit to a grandfathered lot, again, which is a lot that doesn't meet the 10,000, is not an increase in a nonconformity. So again, it would allow someone that has a lot less than 10,000 to add a second dwelling unit in that home. Multifamily dwellings, which are currently allowed. I think people sometimes forget that our village zone, people tend to think the village zone is for single family only. As you can see here, these dwelling units, single family accessory apartments, two family, multifamily, congregate housing, those are all allowed currently in the village zone. The proposal is just to reduce the lot size for a minimum for multifamily to go from 7,500 square feet per dwelling unit to 5,000 square feet per dwelling unit.
And that is a land area, not a building size.
I'm just
Land
get through the
area.
intro first and then public hearing, then we got a lot of questions from the select board.
Sure.
So we have one more? One more to VE?
Yeah, VE,
Is
we
there
can
anything
go
else in
there.
this? Is there anything else in this one?
Nope, nothing here. I just want to mention two, multifamily, which is three family or more, does require site plan approval automatically. It currently does require that. It's nothing new. It is in the current books. So if someone wanted to go from a single family to a three family home, that has to go to the planning board.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Let's
Next one. Next one,
I want to
VE.
get to the intro part.
It's just hard to remember every question when you're not, but I'll work on writing them.
Okay.
while
Nope,
I
go
control
up,
this.
Allison, up above that map that you got there, 22, so it'd be page 21. Yep. All right, this is the village extension. This one's a little more complicated, but not so much so. Currently, okay, you can go up a little bit so you can get multifamily dwellings there. So we're proposing to add multifamily dwellings as a new use in the village extension on sewer. If you're on sewer, you'll be able to have a multifamily dwelling. Multifamily dwellings, again, are 3 units or more. They are currently allowed as open space residential subdivisions. The proposal is to just allow them in the zone, not as part of an open space residential subdivision, but to allow them if you're on sewer and with planning board approval. And on sewer, again, 2-family homes similar to the village. The current ordinance says, and we're not proposing to change the minimum lot size. So I think there was some fear that all of a sudden lots are going to get split up. The 10,000 square foot lot requirement stays the same. That we're not reducing that. We're just saying that if you want a 2-family home or a 3-family or multifamily, you need to have for multifamily 5,000 square feet per dwelling unit. Currently, it says 7,500 in the ordinance, and we'll go to no increase in lot size required for a 2-family home. So you can get a 2-family home on a 10,000 square foot lot, a 15,000 square foot lot, or less. Currently, you can get a 2-family home on a 15,000 square foot home in the village extension on sewer.
Sometimes it's really helpful for people if you speak in acre, if you could do a little bit of acre conversion.
An acre is 43,560 square feet, so a half acre is generally 22,000 square feet is a half acre.
10,000 is just under a quarter.
Correct. And then the other proposal is in the area where there is no sewer. The current minimum lot size is 40,000, and this is the one area that we are proposing to reduce the minimum lot size. State minimum lot size requirement for on-site septic systems, so on-site wastewater disposal, is 20,000 square feet per dwelling unit. We have a 40,000 square foot requirement right now. We're proposing, the planning board and I came up with this, and we're proposing to go from 40,000 to 20,000. We are not proposing to change the road frontage requirement for that lot, but are proposing to reduce the minimum lot size to the state standard. And you see how we also tweaked it a little bit there to add the 20,000, just to be clear, so people understand. Accessory apartments, you do need 20,000 square feet per dwelling unit no matter what. That's the state septic rules. So a 2-family home, it says there, and this caused some confusion with a former planning board member, where it says 2-family dwellings. I think someone assumed that was 2 families only needed a 20,000 square foot lot. If you look at our table, the way it's laid out, and I'm looking to change this in the future, it's per dwelling unit. So a 2-family home would still need 40,000 square feet.
I see.
We also, Allison, if you want to scroll up a little to get that next page, down, sorry, other way, yep. Maximum building coverage, you just went past it, but maximum building coverage is 10%.
Yeah, you went past it. It was the very bottom, and there was a
right
little
there.
tiny piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, right there.
So
See?
not on sewer, maximum building coverage, and this is the coverage of the lot that can be covered by building. This is walled and roofed building. Under the current requirement, it's 10% in the for a lot not on sewer on 40,000 square feet. We're proposing, the proposal is to increase that to 25% when the lot goes down to 20,000 square feet. I think if you think about it, people like the house, they like their garage, they want a barn, they want a shed, and when you add all those things up, if you're still at 10% of 20,000, that means you get a 2,000 square feet of building footprint on the property. And I don't think anyone on the planning board thought that was appropriate, considering we were adjusting this. So that proposal is just to go up to 25%, not on sewer.
Okay.
And I will say that all that stuff gets reviewed by the code office when it comes in. So someone comes in for a permit to build a house or an addition.
Yeah.
Plans come in, we look at lot size, we look
Yeah.
at the footprint, existing buildings on the property, anything proposed. It all has to stay within that number.
And so, but that doesn't include any kind of impervious surface calculation.
No, we have not done impervious
You can
surface
cover 25% of the lot with a
building.
and then pave till your heart's content and, sorry, I should have phrased that differently.
I want to.
Don't regulate, nowhere in our ordinance do we regulate impervious surface. I think it's appropriate probably to start looking at certain areas that where our systems are overburdened.
Just many, many
Yeah,
places.
Jeremy, is that the end of the 3?
That is the end of that's the end of 2. If you go back to right there, Allison, it stays right there.
Yep. Yep.
On the left-hand side here, this is the non-conforming section for the purposes, and this is an additional sentence. For the purpose of non-conforming lots with structures, the conversion and/or expansion of a single-family dwelling to a two-family dwelling shall not be considered an increase in conformity on a non-conforming sewered lots in the traditional village and village extension districts. That would allow, again, someone doesn't meet that 10,000 square foot requirement, say, and they want to add a second home or second dwelling to that home, existing home, we wouldn't consider that an increase in a nonconformity.
I see. That's
what that does.
All right, with that, I want to open any questions up or comments from the public for, against, or just want to discuss. Stephanie?
I'd also mention that all of the other requirements, lot coverage, all those things stay the same.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of questions. You might want to hang right there, Jeremy.
Really predicting a question.
I have a bunch.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Smith. I live on Washington Street, and I am one of the founders of the Mid-Coast Regional Housing Trust, and our organization is hoping to increase significantly permanent, attainable, and affordable workforce housing in Knox County and the surrounding areas. And I'm here to speak in favor of zoning amendments that would expand attainable housing in Camden. And we appreciate all the hard work the planning board has done around looking at our zoning code. Our group has recently completed a regional housing needs assessment. We learned that 25% of young teachers recruited by our school district turn down the job because they can't find a place to live. 1/3 of our housing units are now seasonally occupied, and that proportion is growing rapidly every year. The unmet demand for affordable housing year-round is directly affecting every sector of the local economy. We can't find enough skilled trade people to maintain our existing housing stock. The hospitality trade is suffering because there are not enough workers who have housing. We need teachers and public safety workers, and they can't afford to be our neighbors. Housing's a big problem that's going to need a big solution. The proposed zoning amendments provide additional opportunities for two-family dwellings in the traditional village and in the village extension. These are a big step in the right direction. They will also make it easier for nonprofits to rehabilitate tax-acquired property in these areas. Some residents may say that Camden needs to preserve its character, and we completely agree. We all love our beautiful town, but we need to remember its heritage. People came here for resources and the ability to have thriving businesses. They built densely settled neighborhoods in close proximity to their workplaces. Those neighborhoods of small houses built for workers still exist, and they're vital parts of our community. Any neighborhood in the village, with a few exceptions, has a mix of housing. With real estate prices rising faster and faster, the option to convert single-family homes to two-family homes where appropriate makes sense. The Mid-Coast Regional Housing Trust looks forward to working with the Select Board and other community leaders to address this pressing need for more attainable housing for working individuals and families. And we strongly urge you to vote in favor of these zoning changes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who would like to, from the public, who would like to speak to any of these 3 items we're considering at the moment? Yeah, Josh.
Thanks for seeing me. I'm Josh Hickson. I'm a property owner and business owner in Camden. I'm here today to speak in favor of the amendments. It feels really appropriate that I'm here today. There's someone that's training tonight in the restaurant. He came in to interview and he's doing a trail shift. He lives far away, but he wants to live here. The closest housing he's been able to find is 45 minutes away. And he thinks that might be doable, which is kind of crazy. He's been trying to find anything within the 5 towns, anything close, there's nothing. I also interviewed someone last week. She was amazing. She had years and years of experience, super appropriate for the business. She actually fits right into one position we really need. She's been trying for months to find something, and still came and interviewed, drove up from Boston, did the interview. She was great. And she's going to let me know if she can find anything. There's nothing even remotely close to here. So I probably won't hear from her again. We've been operating 40 Paper for about 12 years, 3 years at another location, so a part of this community for years. It used to be that the vast majority of the staff lived in Camden. Currently, 2 staff live in Camden. One of them is about to lose their housing this summer and are trying to find something, but haven't been able to find anything even remotely affordable. And they're probably going to have to move away. There are currently only 2 houses for sale in Camden. I found this funny. I checked today. There are 2 houses for sale in Camden. One is $500,000. It is 1,500 square feet. And there's another house for sale that is $300,000, and it is a 500 square foot house. And
Don't forget the $8.5 million one, too.
Yeah, that's true. It's not even on Zillow. So like, I
actually looked last night.
But those are the houses for sale right now. It's the housing crisis right now isn't really even an affordable housing crisis. It is a major housing crisis. And I know that these amendments don't solve any of those problems, but I feel like they're a step in the right direction. And I feel like it's a really complicated problem, but it feels like at least it's a step in the right direction. So thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else from the public who'd like to speak to, and I see Beatty moving up, so I'm assuming you want to speak to it.
Beatty Parker, 68 Washington Street, and I wasn't sure I wanted to say anything, but I'm really appreciative of the effort to get more housing in existing housing. Now, some of the sections that you're talking about adding footprint, right? Or is it's not all within the existing footprint?
Some of it is and some of it isn't,
Right.
depending on the ordinance change.
Right, and the further away areas are where you're allowing more building within the property size.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm really happy about the part that uses the existing house footprint. That's not adding any more impermeable surfaces. And I'd like to mention, as I think increasing affordable housing, or I don't know if this is going to be affordable, but it's going to be more housing, is something that we need. I just would like to say that there's going to be parking that people will add, and I'm concerned about those impervious surfaces. We're trying to protect, in this kind of ordinance, you're trying to protect the watershed, you're trying to protect the permeability of the land. And if you can think ahead to what the parking additions will be for the additional housing, that would be great. I want the housing. I think I like all the ordinance, I particularly like that within the footprint part. And this does not include the area with the very large houses that are largely empty that cost so much. You've avoided that area. No,
it's included.
It is included. Great.
Yep.
Well, cheers for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Beatty. Good to see you.
I find empty houses disturbing as we don't have people to help take care of the town.
Thanks, Beatty. Appreciate it very much. Any other public? Well, yeah, Steve had his hand up. Steve, can you, brought you on as a participant on Zoom. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can, Bob.
So would you please go ahead with your comments? And introduce yourself, please, Steve.
My comment is really more of a question. I'm certainly in favor of,
Steve, would you please?
increasing housing possibilities in town, especially if they could turn out to be affordable. My question is, with some of the recent changes we've met and concern about rentals, is there anything that prevents these second units from just becoming a bunch more Airbnbs?
Before you answer the question, I want to introduce Steve Gold of Camden. Go ahead,
Right.
Jeremy. Sorry,
Steve Gold of Camden.
Thank you very much.
Steve, nothing specific to that in these changes. I will say that a lot of the lots, I looked at every single, every lot that we have in the village zone. And it's remarkable that there's a lot of lots that can already do this. Because they have 7,500 square feet per dwelling unit and they haven't done it yet. So I'm not sure there's going to be a rush to do that because they already can do that currently. What this is just trying to do is trying to facilitate other options, other opportunities for people on their properties. We still have the short-term rental registration ordinance that's unhosted. That's still in the books. So nothing specific to this this ordinance requirements addresses short-term rentals. But again, I think people have that option and that opportunity already to add these additional dwelling units to homes because they meet the current requirements, and we're not seeing a massive conversion to short-term rentals, I will say.
Mm-hmm.
Does that help, Steve?
Yeah, no, I understand that, we may not be seeing a huge amount of that, but there has been complaints about the idea that investors were buying houses, converting them to rental. We do open up a whole new opportunity of buying a unit, converting it to 2 rental units, et cetera. Will that start a trend in that direction? Who knows? But
Especially when nothing's for sale.
I mean, there's about 700 lots that can already facilitate these in town, and we're not seeing it.
Well, some of them are used for, if you look at the short-term rentals that are available today, you will see some multi-unit dwellings being used for that purpose,
I will say, I have spoken to one of the entities that helps municipalities regulate short-term rentals. I just did this last week. And I think a year or so ago, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, when we first started looking at this, there were, I think, 380 some odd unique rentals, short-term rentals in Camden. As of last week, there were 194, which is a considerable reduction from 2 years ago. And I don't know what that is, other than it's probably related to COVID, would be my guess.
the time of year that it's being measured.
Well, they ran this last week, Allison, and if I'm coming to Camden and wanting to rent for the summer, I'm booking my trip already.
That means that they're not open for rental in the winter. Doesn't mean that they're not open for rental in the summer.
I'm skeptical of that.
I'm skeptical of half the inventory disappearing in 1 year.
I mean, every time they use such a precise number like that, you have to know they've gotten it wrong, because there's no way that they can, there's so many, it just can't be right.
Let's,
I wouldn't argue with their number.
Continue with the.
Wouldn't argue with their
Josh, you have
number.
another question? Go ahead. Yeah, please, you have to. Otherwise, we can't hear you.
One thing I'll say is that we had a rental that we used to Airbnb. We stopped because of that you had to rent it for a week, so it didn't make sense. And it was a year-round rental. We just sold it last year because the housing prices are huge.
Right.
With the housing, as the prices for housing continues to become astronomical, Airbnb is not that profitable. It's kind of profitable, but cleaning, maintenance, all of that, it's a huge hassle. And if suddenly your house now that was worth $200,000 in 2 years is now worth $450,000,
You sell it.
you sell. So the idea of the inventory disappearing actually makes a lot of sense to me, at least from personal experience.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you. Is there anybody else in the public wants to make any comments before I close the public portion? All right, I'm going to close the public portion now and revert to select board discussion of these items, which are B, C, G. It's D, E, and F.
D, E, and F, yes.
Yep, right. So to let's just take them one at a time if we can. The first one would be the D, which is the non-conformance section, non-conforming structures, which allows the existing single-family dwellings, blah, blah, blah.
I have no discussion, except I think this is a good move forward, a good start. I agree that we need to, I think short-term housing has disappeared because of people moving here because of COVID, but it will return, I think. So it's something we need to look at down the road because we need full-time housing. But I will make a motion that we approve Camden zoning ordinance to amend Article 6, nonconformance section 4, nonconforming structures, parentheses 1, will allow single-family dwellings on existing nonconforming lots of record to be converted into a two-family dwelling in the traditional village district and in the village extension district on lots with sewer.
I second.
Motion made and second. Discussion? Questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Now, how hard would it be to simply add in language that prevents units created through this ordinance change from being short-term rentals? I mean, we've done that with the accessory apartment stuff, and it just seemed wise. It's not that big of an issue, and it's not that, how big of an issue is it to just include that in there?
Well, I think we'd have to come up with a real definition of short-term
Can we just
rental.
copy the language from the
rental
from the
registration
accessory apartment changes that we used?
Oh, sure, you could try to do that. That's one way to do it, to use the definition of.
Well, I guess, isn't the question really, we just ignore we have an ordinance on the books that doesn't allow short-term rentals?
But it's the way that
The accessory apartment ordinance that was adopted a couple of years ago, I think it was, says that it must be, both units must be the primary residence of those that are occupying it, which is 6 months plus 1 day. So can we do that?
But we can't, but the question I have is, do we enforce it?
From time to time.
So the issue is that we can have all the ordinances we want to kind of curtail short-term rental and things like that, and we can, which would show that the town has a vision about it. But if we don't enforce it, I can name you. I can take you around town, Jeremy, and show you. You know them like me. So it's really, for me, it's a trade-off between legislating things that are interesting and that make us a forward-thinking town and actually enforcing those things.
I think it's a very good point. I will say the short-term rental registration ordinance that was adopted, the unhosted one, has some issues with it implementing it. So I do want to look at that one again, and Audra and I talked about it previously.
All it does is limit it to 1 week. It's this 1 week category, though, right? Which really. Making things available for a week and longer doesn't really
Well,
even.
if the idea is we were going to use technology to try to enforce that registration ordinance, we have created a definition that makes it unenforceable
Very
by using
hard
technology.
for any of the technologies to utilize our definition because the way we defined unhosted.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is, if you go on Airbnb, you can find all kinds of rentals in Camden.
You can. I will say last year we sent out, I don't know, a dozen notices to property owners that we found out were, and they replied back to us and said, what do we need to do?
Right.
And we said you can't rent them for less than 7 nights. So that's what it is. And they all said, okay. In the perfect world, we match up our ordinance with real world terminology so that any of these technology companies that can assist a municipality to do this, when they scrub, all the platforms out there, they can throw out, and that's where the 194 came. They scrubbed Airbnb, VRBO, a whole host of them, and 194 were up. I'd like to try to work on that for November, to be honest with you, is to really try to address the accessory apartment, or the way we define that accessory, but the unhosted short-term rentals.
Well, we have like a comprehensive ordinance that looks at accessory apartments, short-term rentals, and try to check all those boxes that we're all concerned about, but in one ordinance.
Yeah, I agree. I
Or
mean, the
November, I
planning
think
board's
it makes
concerned
more
about it
sense.
too. It didn't come up a whole lot in in the conversation, to be honest with you, this time, as opposed to when we talked about accessory apartments the last time. That was a big part of it, and that's why they wanted to keep it that 6 months plus 1 day, but it didn't really spur the conversation with
I
them
think
this time.
the fact of the matter is they're parallel efforts. They're not going to, it's not a head-on-tail thing. And
I think
if we could do it by November, that's a lot, that's a lot of work to do. If you're going to short-term rental regulations in 6 months.
I mean, it brings out community members, like, it's pretty much the only thing the town can do. We started this a little bit when some of us first got on the board, and it's,
But the accessory apartment passed overwhelmingly, and that said 6 months plus 1 day, you know?
and that was so that's why I'm not understanding why I thought that was a great solution.
Well, I don't want to use that solution to fix this, because using technology, like, Sophie's saying, how do you enforce this? It's got to be an ordinance that you can really enforce, and the technology using our definition is challenging, so we need to tweak our definition. I would hate to, push these aside and address that and then bring this back once that's addressed. I would prefer to move these along like the planning board recommended and
have a
and at the same time move these forward, because again, if the town decides to address short-term rentals in a more comprehensive way, it's going to apply to those units anyway.
Anyway, exactly.
In my opinion, there's no way you're going to do a short-term rental thing in 6 months.
We failed every time.
Well, we spent a lot. I mean, I've spent a lot of time at it over the last 4 years.
I would agree with Jeremy. I think we should move ahead with these and know that the wishes of the select board, and I think a lot of the townspeople, are that we want to address short-term rentals.
And the Mid-Coast Housing Trust. I mean, I've been meeting with them regularly too, and that is a concern too. And like Josh said when he was here, short-term rentals, it's an issue. So we got to address it somehow.
So with that, Councilman,
Just quickly, though, where do we stand on the ordinance that also passed overwhelmingly, which was to require registration for short-term rentals? I guess I hesitate to pass new
short-term
things when, I know that's a monumental task to.
It is. It's a monumental task without a technology company to assist us. And I've reached out to firms to try to help us, and they all point to our definition of unhosted short-term rentals. Unhosted.
Well, I think all we were asking for is voluntary.
Understand, but how do we enforce that? That's how do I get a list, or our office get a list of all of the unhosted short-term rentals in town?
You have to start with just, how do you get a list of all the unregistered dogs in town? You start with making a requirement and you chip away at it. But because you can't track down every single unlicensed dog doesn't mean you cease to require that dogs be licensed.
I think
I'm just some point that we're not, and do we just make a decision not to?
No, it's still required, and everyone that calls, I say there's a requirement to register them. Thus far, no one has. Right. So
I think we're getting off the issue.
I think we are.
It's an ordinance that we brought forward to voters as a first step in addressing the problem, and I didn't realize that it just was not.
But we created an unenforceable ordinance again.
Untrackable. I mean, you can't figure out how we can do all the notice. I can do notice and send try to get the newspapers to, run the story that you got to run your, register your unhosted short-term rental. We can do that. But for us to actually try to figure out who is renting, that's impossible. It's an impossible feat.
You guys get an update on that, right? Because I get questions about it all the time, and I think they're working on it.
It's a huge issue, and I agree. But
the ordinance is still on the books, and they still need to register, and I'm telling people that they
do you have a form available?
I have a form available. I do need to come to you for a fee.
We have a motion and a second on the table.
Could we clarify that this is for this is only impacting the village?
I'm talking to D, which is the
non-conformity
zoning ordinance amend Article 6, non-conforming Section 4, non-conforming structures.
That's the motion that's on the table at the moment. I'm going to call a vote. All those in favor of this? 4-0. Okay. So we'll go to item E, which now, to your question, is the village extension piece of the pie. Mark?
I will make a motion that we approve or amend Camden zoning ordinance, amend Article 8, Section 7, Village Extension VE, Article 4, : B, permitted uses and E standards. These amendments will allow multifamily dwellings on lots in the Village Extension District served by public sewer. 2, allow two-family dwellings on sewered lots without an increase in lot size per dwelling unit. 3, reduce the minimum lot size for lots without public sewer from 40,000 square feet to 20,000, which is consistent with the state's minimum lot size regulations. And 4, the amendments would increase the maximum building coverage for those lots from 10% to 25%.
I second.
Motion made and second. Discussion. Questions? Allison?
So again, I'm really supportive of increased density, and overall think these ordinances changes are good and a much better approach than the changes to the rural subdivisions.
Oops.
Last time.
Unless somebody else has a question, we're fixing that.
But I'm uncomfortable with the aspect of it with the lots with no sewer. That is just a much, in terms of environmental impact, when we are, this just, the thing just.
I still got it.
Oh.
The Zoom
right,
stuff.
because you're the so you're, thank goodness, that's a.
But I'm not doing anything.
No, it's fine, because we have two co-hosts. The increase, when we say as a, our comprehensive plan, many discussions that we have talk about the stormwater issues that we're having. I can point to overflowing storm drains in every area of town. There's especially in the McGonagall watershed, just too much water everywhere. So increasing the amount of impervious surface, increasing septic systems, was there discussion at the planning board level about how we can go about making sure that this doesn't happen in places where there are known issues?
No, I mean, I will say if you look at the Village Extension, most of that area does not have municipal infrastructure. Most of that area doesn't have catch basins. There's generally just ditches along the road. So it's not as if we're, in the Village Extension that is served by sewer, say over by Cobb Hill Road or in that area.
So all of that, Cobb Hill and stuff, that drains to a stormwater pond that we know to have significant issues. And so I guess I'm supportive of doing all of these things to increase density in the, the walkable downtown and, all of these things. But we keep saying that later on we're going to address the environmental standards, but then we don't get around to doing that. And so if we could add language such as, where an increase, it does not create an increase in impervious surface or.
Well, that's just not realistic. I mean, we don't have that in any ordinance section anywhere do we regulate impervious surface. I do think it's appropriate in certain locations to do it. We don't currently do it. These people, if these ordinances don't pass, every one of these lots can, for the most part, cover their lot line to lot line with impervious surface. We don't regulate it at all right now. So they could do it today, whether or not this gets passed or not.
I understand that, but we have pretty significant problems. And so if we're increasing the ability for there to be impervious surface and increasing the ability for there to be development within areas where we already know there to be an overabundance of stormwater, does the planning board discuss areas of town where it's known that there are issues?
No, they have not done that. No, not as part of this. No. And they review site plan applications, they review stormwater sections, but not as part of this. They have not reviewed that.
People call just nonstop about overflowing everything, as you are probably pretty well aware. So
the most areas that I get phone calls are in the Village District, not in the Village Extension. In the Village Extension over in Cobb Hill, there's an area.
I know, but the water starts from those places, and then it comes down and it overflows so it all drains to the
ocean.
Yeah. It all drains to the ocean, but it passes through numerous neighborhoods on the way. So I think with the Village with the changes within the traditional village as well, that when we make these sort of bold changes to do what I think we should be doing, it would be a great opportunity to add in requirements that limit the amount of impervious surfaces. We could say, here, we're going to make all of these things easier for you, but not allow it to do this, and this.
I mean, that's a big undertaking. It's not insurmountable, and I know, the Bowdoin intern that we had last year did get some data for us and has some mapping. But that is I think it's a big task, and I think it's a multi-departmental task, and it's
I'd also say areas where it's most effective, it is not addressed through the zoning ordinance, and it's addressed through things like a stormwater utility.
Right. That's why I mentioned the village.
Charge people for impervious surface and then incentivize them not to build it or seek alternatives. So I think that if that's the policy mechanism you want to pursue, then the zoning ordinance might not be the best place where you can most effectively address it.
Right.
There are any number, we haven't, but we are not coming up with anything. And so but we're saying as a town that it's a very big problem, the amount of stormwater.
But what Audra's saying, this has to be a separate policy direction from us, and that doesn't affect what we have at hand right here, if she's right about not addressing it through the zoning ordinance.
Well, I'm not saying you can't, I'm just saying it's not as effective as other mechanisms.
I'm going to kind of hear any changes you want to make to this motion in terms of what recommended changes are you making?
I mean, I can't support increased growth in the areas where there's no sewer. I don't see that as I don't know if there's a mechanism to vote against a portion of this.
We have a motion on the table, we either vote against it or for it, but, well, Sophie, go ahead.
I just have a question, just a clarifying question, Jeremy. But the changing the square footage from 40,000 to 20,000 is a state requirement?
It's not a state requirement. That's the state minimum lot size is 20,000. The comp plan is very clear that it asks the town to look at the village extension hard to go from 40,000 to 20,000. It does say that in there. Allison, if you can get back to the maps, I don't know if it's possible, but the village extension piece, I think, again, this is a case where we look at the village extension and say, oh gosh, we're going to get all these new lots or all the potential for new development.
We have the hydrogeological report from Midcoast Solid Waste, which does contribute to our stormwater problems, I promise, but here we go.
So that's the village extension map. Okay, so if you can stay there for a second. The blue is the sewer. I don't know if you see the blue. You see the blue goes up along, you see the blue line? That's sewer. Now, the gray is the shoreland zone, right? So a lot of the shoreland zones are already used up because of lot size and frontage. And there's a fair amount of the village extension is existing subdivisions that you're not going to be able to alter anyway.
All have stormwater problems, but yeah.
Well, I'm not. What I'm saying is those lots.
So it doesn't impact them.
It doesn't even impact them. So the majority around, you see Pleasant Ridge right there. That's in that area, that subdivision that is
overflowing
to the left there. Right, Allison, can you go? You know where Pleasant Ridge is, right? On that map, down. Right there. Keep going. Keep going.
Honestly.
Right there.
I agree.
Right there.
One of the things with the town map, on the town GIS, is that none of it's labeled. And the colors are all very, very similar for all the different zoning districts. So for you to be able to go on there and see, like, what's the village extension? Actually, there's no place where the actual full written thing comes out. And so it's very hard to identify, even looking. So I looked at this ahead of time, then attempted to cross-reference with the town system. But since none of this is labeled, it's just a series of problems that makes it hard to know what we're talking about a lot of the time.
Okay, I don't consider them problems, but I mean, a majority of that area to the left there, bottom left, is subdivision. So you're not going to have, those lots are not going to be split apart, split in half, or more dwelling units added, because there's deed restrictions and subdivision approvals that are needed to do that. And you have to get all the subdivision owners involved and supportive of that to make those changes. And then if you go up Mountain Street, you got subdivisions over there, and then you got subdivisions along the river. So it's really not a whole lot of town that is going to benefit from these changes, but there are changes that are proposed that could facilitate more housing. But I don't at all agree that these changes will facilitate a massive amount of impervious surface in the watershed, because they're existing subdivisions or they're in the shoreline zone already and they're limited to what they can do. The area that is served by sewer, if you can see, most of it's subdivisions already, and those aren't going to be affected. So you got a handful of lots along Washington Street that are not in subdivisions that could benefit on the village piece.
I'm going to have to.
Seeing how the water goes down Washington Street.
These are all great points, and I totally agree with the direction, Allison, you're talking about. But the matter at hand is, to me, this is one small step for a person, and we got a lot more to do. So I want to call the vote on this one, if it's okay with the board. All those in favor of this item? I lost which one it is.
Number F.
E. Correct. E. All those in favor?
Oh, sorry.
All those opposed? It's 3-1. Thank you. We're going to go on to item F. I think it's the last one, which is for the village. I'm sorry, traditional village.
I will make a motion that we amend Article 8, Section 7, Traditional Village E standards. This amendment will allow existing single-family dwellings on existing non-conforming lots of record in the traditional village to be converted into two-family dwelling, and it reduces the lot size for multifamily units in the village from 7,500 square feet per unit to 5,000 square feet.
I second.
Motion made and second. Discussion again. Allison?
Why did you stop at two-family dwellings and not
three?
allow for?
They're already allowed. If you look at it, your multifamily dwellings are allowed, right there, right in front, right what's on the screen.
5,000 square feet per.
Currently, multifamilies are allowed in the village zone. I mentioned that earlier. You need 7,500 square feet per dwelling unit. All that we're proposing to do is go down to 5,000 square feet per dwelling unit.
Right.
It says, this amendment will allow existing single-family dwellings on existing non-conforming lots of record in the traditional village to be converted into a two-family dwelling, which leads you to believe that's not allowed right now.
And it reduces.
On non-conforming lots, correct, it's not allowed. And it reduces the lot area for multifamily.
So, but it doesn't allow, on non-conforming lots, it doesn't allow those existing buildings to be turned into four-family.
Currently, not a non-conforming lot of record that doesn't have, you'd need to have 4 times 7,500 in order to put a four-family unit on a lot in the village.
I'm just wondering why you said two-family here instead of multifamily.
Because if you go back to the nonconformity section that you already passed, it says that 1 and 2 family homes are not considered an increase in a nonconformity, but a 3-family home, I did not want to add a third family or 4-family to something that could be a 5,000 square foot lot. I thought it's not appropriate.
Good clarification.
Well, in some places, it's like you can, well.
I would add that all of these zones do have a fair number of multifamily units already, and we don't get any complaints or issues with them.
Exactly. I mean, it's scattered throughout every neighborhood in Camden. I can point to so many multifamily homes on non-conforming lots, some of them with 4 apartments that have, I mean, that's really the kind of thing that we need. And a lot of these people can even commit to not having a car. A lot of them already don't have a car. And so if we could say, in these cases, you can, when you don't have to add additional parking, there are a lot of people that will just walk to their job. Anyway.
I think that's an impervious surface conversation that we can have, and I certainly am going to I've talked about it with the planning board about doing it, having those conversations.
Any further comments?
No.
All those in favor? 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you,
That's
Jeremy.
a lot of heady stuff covered in
It is.
the last hour.
I mean, I deal with it all day, so it's, I think for you folks, it's
There's more to
probably a
follow.
little,
There's more to follow.
there's more to follow.
Better versions of the zoning maps so that people can understand. I understand that it all.
It's funny you say that because when I looked at the package, I'm like, wow, I love those maps. So,
But then how did you know where the village extension was or the?
because
Well,
You look at the other map.
you look at the other maps.
the big one. That's what I do.
And you have the big map, it's.
I'm referring to the town system, really, like the online GIS system that everybody uses to go to, we'll discuss
Right.
it later.
Thank you,
but-
Jeremy. Thanks a lot for your patience, too. On to item 4, which is our action items, the first one we have is the appointments to the Conservation Commission. Allison, do you want to lead the talk on that one, or do you want?
Yeah, I would love to.
I'm sorry.
Can I ask, I don't think there's anybody waiting for that, but there are people here for the day sailors, that maybe we could move forward so they don't have to sit through the next conversation.
The board wants to. I mean, this is
Aaron's here for Conservation Commission.
This is a short one. You what? Let's continue with the agenda as it is. The appointment, shouldn't take us very long, the appointments for the Conservation Commission, do you think?
No, I don't think,
No.
depends how much resistance I face.
There you go, there you go.
So lots of excitement about getting the Conservation Commission back up and going. Many things that we could focus on. There was the document that we had discussed earlier. One, as many of you probably know, there has been a group of citizens that has formed spontaneously and miraculously in support of trees and pushing a very, for more movement in terms of planting street trees. So one of the sort of most urgent things is to figure out how the Conservation Commission, having the responsibility of overseeing town street trees and advising the tree warden, how they can play sort of a supportive role to the group that's of citizens, many of whom don't want to be on the Conservation Commission necessarily. We don't want to have a situation where if you want to be involved with trees in Camden, you have to be on the Conservation Commission and do all of these different things. And so that's going to be one of our first tasks. What I'm proposing, this in the packet here, this does not encompass all of the people who are interested. There are others as well. But in order to make sure that we kind of round out the group over time with the different skills that are needed and don't start with just all one thing, it would be good tonight, I think, if we could appoint a few people. Keith Blizzard is somebody who you all are maybe familiar with. He's spoken to us a few times and has been organizing this sort of ad hoc Camden Tree Committee, working with Dave St. Laurent. So we're hoping to bring him in along with Rebecca Jacobs, who we're lucky enough to have as a Camden resident, but she also works for the Knox and Lincoln Soil and Water Conservation District and has been working advising on some of the species selection for Camden street trees, and I think is also going to be able to play a really helpful role in advising the Conservation Commission and the town, hopefully, on some of these land use planning issues that we've just been talking about. So between her and Keith, and then to start with Barb Oland, who's a longtime resident and gardener, and then having us meet, the hope would be that the commission could meet and have a couple introductory meetings, encourage everybody who's interested to come to those meetings as we sort of sort out what the skills are. And then after that, after sort of everybody knows what they're, what they're signing up for, we talk about reading the comprehensive plan, things like that. Then we come back and figure out, okay, it makes sense for this person to be have a 1-year term, a 2-year term, a 3-year term, and sort of formalize it at that point. But since we are starting with all new people, rather than just saying tonight, let's take these people and make them 3-year members and.
Well, I would like to know how many other people are interested, and what are the numbers? What's the makeup of the conservation? What are the numbers? Is it 7?
Yeah, it's 7 according to our charter.
Okay.
And so Brian Robinson is another person. He's on vacation right now. Wasn't able to get his application in on time, but he's longtime member of the Parks and Rec committee, and
We had one just added today.
Then,
so there's,
personally, I would prefer to wait until we see all the applications. I have a reason I would like to wait, but that's my vote.
I mean, I think actually, personally, I think it would be fine to wait to do official appointments. I guess what I'm asking is, I think it would be worthwhile to start, there are a couple of things that need to be done to move. There's a tree mapping app that is near completion in terms of development. So to be able to have Dave be able to present that and anything that he feels he needs to do in order to order the trees for next year. But we could have a couple meetings, they'll be live streamed, talk about what the skill levels and priorities are, and it gives people a chance to.
I understand. I would
So
prefer.
I'm agreeing with
to
you,
wait.
and then we could wait to do
I would like to wait on all.
no meetings?
No, I would like to wait on assigning any
Appointments.
I think
appointments
that would be
tonight.
fine, and we can let these people that are interested come.
Okay.
I think I like the plan you outlined, Alison. I just have one concern, and I know Keith very well, so I know he's not going to take it. He's not going to be happy with me, but it's okay. I mean, I'm wondering, people who apply and say I'm only interested in one thing for a committee.
Yes.
Is like, so do we need you on a committee, or do we want to keep you in the wings and draw you in for your technical expertise for that specific topic? So the question I have is, and maybe you can have a conversation with Keith about it and better understand, what is everybody's appetite to be actively on a committee. And it also might be a way for us to rethink those committees, using your example, saying for some of the work we're doing in the town, like the tree, replenishing the tree coverage.
One item.
One item, exactly.
I 100% agree.
Me too.
So maybe, Keith is not on the conservation committee, but he's kind of our go-to person for trees or something like that.
There's already a little bit of stuff arising about, a separate committee from the town that is formed that's advising a town staff person and different people feeling.
Right.
So I think that is actually, I think we need to have sort of an open and frank discussion about some of the issues that arise, how you can contribute to the town on a committee versus as a volunteer.
Or as a task force to
Exactly, for a specific.
For a task force, for a specific item, we just pull in the expertise we know in the town, we get it done, and then we move on. But those committees that are like forever committeeing.
We might need somebody else to because one of the things about people that care a lot about trees, we've learned, is that they also don't always agree on which trees and all of that. So figuring out, okay, how are we going to resolve differences about, which trees to plant? And I think that there's a reason that historically the Conservation Commission has been the entity that's been tasked with this, but it hasn't always worked. It's gone in and out. We don't know the right answer. We might need to change that.
And I think this is the time to be creative and to kind of think about how we want to organize the conservation committee. Do we want to have a task force for trees? I mean, let's be creative here and be
you've got to
relevant and use the skills where we need them for the period of time that, one, they're willing to give us and that we need them for.
Mike, totally agree what you're saying and both are saying. I think one of the biggest challenges we have sometimes with commissions or committees, whatever we have going, you really got to decide where they're going with what topics. What agenda items, because if you don't, you might have the wrong cross-section of people on the commission.
Exactly.
All right, but before I go any further, Stephanie had a hand up, a former Conservation Commission member.
So I'm Stephanie Smith, Washington Street, and I was on the Conservation Commission. And I strongly agree that you needed a cross-section of people. When we did the ordinances on polystyrene and plastic bags, a community member helped us, wasn't on the commission, didn't want to be on the commission, did the job, off she went. And on terms of who's on it, you have to have a general understanding of the broad scope, and I do believe there needs to be mutually agreed upon priorities between the citizens on the commission and the select board. Because if the commission feels like they're being dictated, you must do this, you'll lose people. And so I was on the commission that fell apart. And as some of you know. And
We do.
And I just feel strongly that these committees can be very effective, but there has to be a partnership and a mutual understanding of what you're signing up for.
Thank you, Stephanie. We hit the nail right on the head. So I guess what I'm hearing is that we're going to start off with this group, Allison, yourself as liaison to this commission, to determine these elements we're talking about in terms of where they're going, with what cross-section we want to have, and whether or not individuals who are interested are may be too singular. And or too many of them are too singular. Those are decisions you have to make. So you come back and make a more substantive recommendation for actual appointments. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And to remind everybody, we did have a document that goes through all the things that the comprehensive plan
yes.
mentions. And the focuses were supposed to be on tree mapping, stormwater mapping, and mapping out critical land resources that have already been identified in the comprehensive plan. There's a lot of really, so it's not as exciting as some might imagine. And if they don't, if somebody doesn't want to read the comprehensive plan, the Conservation Commission might not be the best.
Well, that's good test, because we always talked about even committees reading the comprehensive plan. Many are well-intentioned, but they're rather singular in focus for good reason. For very good reason, but some of those may, to our whole issue we dealt with and dealing with committees, task forces, a smaller group may be a better option. But we'll wait for your report after your first meeting.
Cool. Great, thank you.
Sure. On to the next item, which is a request from the day sailors for some modified language to their agreement regarding parking. Do you want to speak to it, Aaron?
Spokesperson?
Oh, sorry, didn't mean to nail you.
Well, I just didn't want to presume I was speaking for them either, so. Hi, how's it going, guys?
Same old.
Great. Do we need to, I was thinking tonight, actually, I was wondering how many select board meetings I've been to in my lifetime now.
A few hundred.
I've done a few.
One more than the last one you came and said that.
One
more than the last one you came and opened with exactly the same phrase.
Maybe just explain the objective of what, forget about the actual language.
Simple, right? We had a conversation, and was December, about changing the parking permit situation for the day sailors.
That's correct. It was the permit. It was specifically the permit.
Specifically the parking permit. And you asked to move our parking permits up to Washington Street.
Yep.
Which, if I'm mistaken, anybody can go to Washington Street. So there was no special arrangement with Washington Street. Just make sure I'm catching all the details.
Just for you guys.
Thanks. We'd love to have 5 spots up there. That's not true. I think really what we're trying to just achieve is that we have the same parking rights as everybody else in town. Like if we're not going to have parking permits, that's fine. But the language you have written in there now without the parking permits basically means is we cannot park down there at all. And that's really not fair. So I just want to, I basically just wrote in there if you want to read it.
I think I can clarify because we've had a discussion about it. What's happened is you were not allowed to have anyone, because you had a parking permit, you were not allowed to have any other person park for any time whatsoever at the landing because you had the parking person. They were legally not allowed to park there.
Correct. The only reason
you're not allowed to park there, it still says that none of your people can go down and park for 2 hours as any other citizen should be, and that's not fair. And I agree with that. Because that way one of your employees can come and park for a couple hours and unload stuff or do something and then leave like everyone else is allowed to do. You shouldn't be penalized now that you no longer have your parking permit.
Well, but I want to go back to that. I'm sorry, Mark, you finished?
I was going to say, is that basically what you're trying to
That's basically it. I mean, if you read it, it said we could only park down there with a permit, and now that there is no permit, none of our employees or ourselves can park down there. So I've been trying to figure out how to magically levitate sails onto a boat or move things down back and forth, but I can't figure it out.
Well, there's a difference between loading and unloading and parking.
There's also.
I guess my question is, in my mind, is in the previous language before we changed the one permit, per the language here, it says the the employees, et cetera, suppliers were not allowed to park down there, but there was one permit given per boat, I believe, so that situation already existed.
We can, if you read the language of that,
Yeah.
we could only park down there, any of our agents or any of us, with the one parking permit.
Correct. So, but by de facto, that means that all of your employees, just use that for an example, all your employees were not allowed to park down there. Correct. So that situation already existed.
So if Jessica Wheeler, who lives in Camden, Maine, wants to park down there, I just picked her.
They weren't allowed, per the previous language, to park there, per the agreement language, in the current language, actually. They weren't allowed to park there. That already existed. The only thing that was allowed was one permit for one vehicle.
Correct.
To park there. So that they didn't have the right to park there like a regular resident did for 2 hours.
I think the idea was, if I was not mistaken, is that the idea that because we had the special privilege to park down there, that we shouldn't have any other employees down there. Yep. Is that what you're getting at?
No, trying to establish in your mind, your all mind, that before I know you discouraged employees from parking down there in the past.
Correct.
I know you do. You guys did a great job of that, by the way. But this proposed language is saying, well, we lost one space we were kind of guaranteed in a way with a permit, with a sticker, whatever you call it. Our employees were not allowed to work down there. Now, because we've taken away the one parking space, we want to have the rights of everybody to allow our employees to park there.
How about I rewind a little bit?
Sorry?
How about I rewind a little bit?
Please.
I'm going to go back to December, where we talked about the problems like with a storm.
Yep.
Or something of that like, right?
Yep.
Where suddenly there wasn't any possibility of putting somebody out of harm's way if they were in a lightning storm.
Sure.
We're just going to pick that one. But it was, I believe the intention was to work with us in a way that we could all work down there and get along. And I think the other intention, if I understood, was by taking away our permits, we were all on the same playing ground, right? So unless all of the other restaurants and inns and people that work down there, are you saying that no employees of the town will be parking in the public landing? Then when you change that ordinance, we'll all agree to it. Is that pretty clear? In other words, we're just going to adhere to the rules the town of Camden has always had about parking.
Right.
Everybody.
Right.
Like, you don't need to write any special language. It just says that we will agree to it. And if somebody goes down there, anybody who's an employee or a boat owner, and parks for more than 2 hours and they get a ticket, they get a ticket like everybody else. And we won't be allowed to move our cars per the laws, like from one space to another, right, without getting a ticket. I mean, to me seems
that's a little difficult. That's a little difficult to enforce. But go ahead, Allison.
Yeah, I mean, I think really what we're just trying to achieve is just to be on the same playing ground as everybody else. And I thought that, at least that's what I thought your intentions were.
Okay.
So it seems from conversations in the past, I think everybody agrees that it's beneficial to the town to not have employees of any downtown business or any activity down there using the 2-hour parking as a place to park while they're working, and then engaging in the strategy of moving cars around. That's generally agreed on, right?
Is that a law on the parking permit?
No, it's a partnership with, many downtown businesses see this as beneficial to the larger goal of allowing visitors to find a place to park. And so, many of those businesses already have a building, they have all of those things, they pay taxes, they whatever. We have these special agreements around town with sort of partnership businesses that there's a mutual benefit to the town and to the day sailing businesses to kind of have this partnership of, okay, we'll grant you this space down here, you operate your beautiful boats, people will be happy, all of these things. And so I understand that it's frustrating to have the to lose something that you've had in the past, but it feels a little bit to me like you're saying, all right, well, we're not gonna do that part. I'm not gonna tell my employees not to park there anymore. It feels a little bit like I want the town to suffer because.
No, that's a you putting a twist on.
I'm asking you if that's what it's going,
That's not what I'm asking. Truthfully, honestly, Allison, I have been the police of all my employees for years because I actually thought that permit and the way it was written actually protected more of those parking spots down there. If we're being really honest, I've been the police.
Right, but you're going to cease doing that.
Well, it is so difficult when the only people who cannot use those parking spots at all are my employees, and they see all of those other people. And I'm just speaking for myself at this point. Up until now, I was speaking for everybody, but I want to be very clear. I'm speaking for myself because I don't want to speak for them.
That's fair.
But it is very difficult for 24 years to tell every single employee that they can't be down there at all when they watch all of the other town businesses park down there. And there's no enforcement of those people. And truthfully, I don't want them parking down there.
Everything is very poorly enforced. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
But I felt personally that we did a pretty good job of enforcing that with our employees over the years. But it's very difficult to continue to feel like I should be enforcing all these things as a business owner. I just feel like if somebody's working for me and they want to get out from the storm and they want to get a ticket, I shouldn't be telling them that they can't park there. I'm not going to park there anymore because 2 hours doesn't really do me any good other than dropping stuff off. That's just me. But it's really hard the other way to sit there and say, okay, now there is no place for you to run away from a weird person. There is no place for you to run away from a storm. I just want them to be able to do what they need to do if they feel like they need to do it. Does that make sense?
Can I comment?
I'm just trying to let the people manage themselves. I'm not going to put in my town, in my book, like, hey guys, I think it'd be really awesome, my employee manual, if everybody parked down here. Because the parking is a premium for all the businesses down there. So I feel like you put a twist on it that I really don't like. And I'm just pointing that out.
I can see that you don't like that. I can sense that there's tension here.
Up until then, there was none.
Well, I felt that there was tension when you came in because I get bombarded with requests from people who want to be able to have a business down there that is exactly the same as yours. And they think that there's been unfairness for years because we don't open it up to everybody. And I recognize that not all of that is, everybody has opinions. But you have to understand we get a lot from people that feel things are unfair. I wish that we could work more constructively in terms of the next step of finding places that are safe for people. Did you see Wendy Andreessen's letter in the Camden Herald?
No.
It was this really interesting proposal about lockers. This is what the select board should do. They should put lockers on the side of the public bathrooms and for the day sailors and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But it's sad for me to hear you say that I do think the way you've talked about it in the past is that you are really hard on and sort of enforcing that value of not using those spaces. Because a lot of the spaces also get used by people that are on the day sailors that might, overstay their 2 hours or something. So, to hear you say that you're not going to, discourage this parking activity
I'm not trying to encourage it either. Those are your words. Like, I just feel like no matter what I come up with, Allison, honestly, at this point, all I'm trying to do is just take the ordinance that's already there. Like, I'm not trying to add anything special. There's no smoke and mirrors.
That's understood.
I'm just trying to really get it to the point where we don't have a parking permit. I think we've all moved past that as a group. We just were like, hey, let's just use the laws that are already down there.
Yep.
I just took the exact wording from the actual police. I read the whole parking thing, all 86 pages or whatever it was, because I wanted to learn. But I feel like you're adding things in, and I don't know why I feel that way.
I can see that I recognize that, and I apologize.
But I also have been through these conversations for 22 years, and
I've been to a lot of them too, so I recognize that.
Right.
And I'm just trying to make the business work. Like, I'm not trying to. I was trying to go the other way and not ask for anything special and just have it written right in there.
Let Sophie, you had a question.
So I understand your frustration, but I'm new on the select board, so I'm trying to learn as well. But I think we removed all the special agreements at the town landing. So you're not, I mean.
No,
no,
we just moved the permit.
No, but the businesses, we removed those agreements as well. So everybody is on the same level playing field, which is what you're asking us to do, correct?
Like, that's what you did with the other businesses that you
Right.
removed, right? You just took them back to basically following the laws of the
Can't ever
town.
park on
I
the
think
public
the only
landing.
exception we kept was for Joellen's space because she had a truck that goes.
The delivery.
We didn't do that.
No, we didn't.
Took that one too.
We didn't.
I agree that really maybe this is what needs to force
We
us
wouldn't
to actually
enforce it,
enforce
but
the
we-
whole thing.
Let them,
Essentially,
okay.
All right.
But I think, so they're all removed, so basically, everybody's on the same level playing field.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
one at a time, please. Elliot, do you want to say something? Yeah. Elliot, not there, here. You know the drill.
My name is Elliot Thompson, Camden resident and Harbor Committee member. Why do the fishermen have special parking privileges?
Because of federal requirements for, they would have understood when we, because I brought that up, and we've been told that because of grant funding being used in the past, requirements for working waterfronts and allocation of funds, that certain amount of space and parking spaces needs to be made available
Commercial.
to commercial fishermen.
And the hoist was a project that was funded by federal funds.
So it's like they don't invest money into making things like that available to commercial fishermen, only to have the town keep commercial fishermen out, is the idea.
We're not going to revisit permits tonight. We're talking about this revised language
reasonable
recommended by the day sailors, so I'm going to stay in the course in that discussion.
But the conversation is about parking.
No, the conversation is about the day sailor parking agreement.
And fairness, I mean, it's a relevant.
Oh, we answered the question. We answered the question, so do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Elliot.
Thanks, Elliot.
Mark, go ahead.
I think the clarification here is that the way this is written, we took away the permit, which is fine.
Yep.
But the way this is written, his employees are not allowed, because of the language still, are not allowed to park at the landing in any time. And yet, if you work at any of the restaurants in town, if you work at any of the stores in town, you can still go down there and park. You can park for 2 hours and then leave, and all they want is to be a regular civilian, have the same rights as every other civilian. We encourage working people. We'd like to have those partnerships for employees not to park on Main Street and park in the landing. But the problem is there is no law against them doing it. And that's what this is, a law that says his employees can't park there, and that's not fair. If we make it if we outlaw every employee of every business in town, they're not allowed when working to park on Main Street, to park on the landing, then it's fair.
No.
And honestly, like, if you change the whole ordinance of town, that's great. I'm actually just trying to have something that goes forward for a really long time.
The thing is, we don't allow every single business to have some of the same, to have a phone line on the public landing, and to have benches, and to have, so it is a special sort of arrangement. But I understand, and I don't think there's any, the parking abuse, 2 hour, all of that stuff is rampant, and I understand that it would be very frustrating to have, I understand definitely what you're saying, and the solution is really the comprehensive parking study that we've been involved in, and it would be great to get comments from all of you
We would love
on
to
that.
have
We had
that
a public,
opportunity.
we had a public meeting at the middle school and all of those things. So it just was the tone of feeling like you were no longer going to even discourage it. That sounds like I misinterpreted.
Honestly, I felt your tone was saying that that's what you seemed we were going to do.
I must have
So I
misinterpreted.
apologize.
I apologize too.
Move on beyond that, I hope.
Aaron and I like each other, I think, mostly for the most part.
Anyway, to your point about the businesses downtown, I would like to see us pursuing them from doing the same thing, not permit, it's a partnership. You can't require it. You're right, to see a change in ordinance or something, but to have the businesses, the restaurants, it discouraged the people from parking downtown, parking more remote lots. Exactly what the town of Camden has done with its own employees.
Well, honestly, I think
Right.
that parking lot, when you put it up there years ago, was a game changer, because I've worked here for a long time.
I get it.
But, just parts of this, like, I couldn't and propose to other people, and I should say, got to stop, we, the day sailors, could not.
Yeah.
But it's like supplier, contractor, and agent. Like, if in the past, somebody had to come down and work on your engine, you could give them the pass, right?
Right.
And the mechanic could spend the whole day down there.
Right.
But then reading the town ordinance on parking, both the chief of police and the harbor master could give you an exception to the rule if there was a problem. So why not use the law? That was like first part that brought me to this. And then, as far as the rest of the, just trying to read through here.
No, I get you. I
mean, we kind of are going to have to try to figure out the storage of brochures and other supplies.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly we like to think that you guys are going to work with all of us in this, because I thought that was the tone of the first conversation, right? But there's still whole parts of this that we need to figure out, maybe like a loading and unloading zone.
Yep.
Really, we just want by April to be able to park down there for a couple hours for bringing our sales, and not think, reading this, that you could possibly have your permit for being a day sailor being revoked by being there.
I certainly discussed that with you. I guess my question to our partners is, are you going to encourage or discourage your employees from parking down there?
I'll discourage my employees from parking down there. I do feel like at some point it would be nice to not have to be the only one. I don't want to be the police of it, but.
No, I don't know. I'm not asking you to be the police of the other day, so they're not all here.
If the weather isn't good and somebody wants to park down there, I don't want to have to, I don't want to write so specifically in my, my employee handbook that you can never park down there. I think I'd rather have a training and be like, hey guys, this is the way it works down here. If you've used the parking, then we can't give that to other people. But truthfully, honestly, if you read all of our permits and the way we've supplied information, and you go back to the original parking conversations from 2000, you would actually also know that all of us have to publish parking, for our customers, where they can go in town for free. We actually tell them that they can't, we don't give them permission to park in the parking lot. People go up there and say we have validated their tickets of police officers before. I've been entertained by that over the years with Scott. We don't validate anybody's parking.
I know you don't.
It's also written on our website. Yeah. Some of it's written in our online agreement if somebody buys a ticket. It's like we don't. Yeah. We have tried for years knowing that we do not want to be the cause of the parking problem there. To think automatically suddenly we're going to switch and just start promoting that all of our employees park down there. That I guess I felt was insulting, but maybe
I just clarified that.
But I just realized I feel frustrated because I've had the same conversation for a long time, and I'd like to think I've done a good job over the years. So maybe part of that frustration is just feeling like, hey, Aaron, thanks for doing a good job down there with your employees. You've done a good job keeping people from parking down there. It's been really nice that you've worked on pushing the people that are on the boats to not park.
We all want to hear appreciation occasionally, and we all get our feelings hurt sometimes. And I apologize.
One of the only business owners that actually does make sure that your employees don't park there when they shouldn't be, and thank you for that.
Yeah. If that were pandemic, I'd have less concerns about this whole discussion about any language. If I left the language the way it is, I got to trust you to do the best thing you can do. Even when it's written that way, nobody's going to go running after you to if an employee comes down.
You guys ever been ticketed for? They don't.
Yeah, I don't.
Tickets put on my car because the permit blew off in the wind. And, I mean,
I understand. There's a 2-hour limit, and you have to respect that. You're going to get tickets if you don't, or you lose your.
But I have not had a ticket, not one ticket in the town of Camden since I had that permit.
Mark.
Okay. In order to get this, I'm going to make a motion that we change the language as they have, and to the parking, eliminate the F in yellow and replace it with the F in blue. I'll make that motion so that we can move ahead, and however the select board wants to vote on is fine, but I think that's fair. They're treated like every other person in town.
Thanks.
Knowing that they're not going to encourage people to park there, but they just want to have the legal right to have somebody come for 2 hours if they need to for some reason. Somebody has a doctor's appointment, they have to leave early. If somebody has you know.
They don't have, I mean, maybe the ticket sellers do, but none of my employees have time to move that car again once they come to work.
You're right.
We don't have enough breaks anymore.
They're busy.
This
They're
is just to
busy.
make it fair, so they have the same rights as every other citizen in town does, workers and non-workers, unless we change the law for everybody working in town.
Yeah.
It's not fair to single them out.
And honestly, if you tell me one of my employees has 28, parking permits or tickets, or I come down there and I see a boot on his car,
Yeah.
like,
That's the way it goes.
I would expect that you would call
That's
me.
the way it goes.
You have Steve
Steve
Bixley on.
had raised his hand, and so I brought him
Okay,
in. And
Steve, do you have a
Hi,
comment?
Steve.
Yeah, hey, I'm really glad you allowed me in. I just wanted to make a quick comment. It's nothing new that the parking has always been an issue down there, but one thing that we could do is we could take one of the fishermen spots and, for part of the season, especially while they're doing fit out, we could mark it so that was a specified load and unload just for day sailors. There's an option.
Anybody that needs to load and unload, but
Well, it can be
Do
unload,
we already
unload.
have a loading and
Well,
unloading
that's
zone?
that's for the
It's
commercial
just for fishermen. I went down and looked
But
at
there's
it.
12 spots and there's only 6 fishermen, right?
it's not quite like that. We did this before.
I mean, there's
Feels like
the
that, but-
idea of dedicating some space to emergency days or bad days for a space to protect people is a possible option. I mean, you can always find something like that. But I think the motion at hand, the only thing that my comment on it is, again, I see the language. We go to Harbor Master, I have to trust to do his job, and I have you and many other day sailors around here tonight. I have to trust them to do their job too, to work with us, to not have this be a place where the cleverest are going to move every 2 hours. That's all. And I just think that that's where the partnership comes in. Not the language doesn't mean anything to me, to be honest with you, because nobody's knows who an employee is. It may already be making an exaggeration, of course, that not one of your employees, but that they may be doing it already. We don't know that.
Yeah, I just know I see the same cars every day, so it's not that difficult for me.
I mean, the other businesses, I would, if we had my option, I'd be talking to the business about do not allow your people to park on the landing on Bayview Street or whatever area we're under. Just prohibit it. Again, this is exactly what the town of Camden did and Audra did with her whole staff. We don't have the parking space inside this building anymore. We don't, they're all walking to parking lots. Yes, they work indoors. They're not working in a hurricane, but.
Does anybody have a permit down on the public landing now? Honestly, I just kind of detuned for a couple of months.
No, I'm not aware of any permit.
Like Steve or anybody?
Steve does.
Windjammers?
I'm sure. I bet
There's a parking spot.
Yeah, he has
But
Steve has a parking spot down.
That's
Town
going to
of-
change now. I've told him as soon as this goes into effect, he needs to also
Move.
Walking.
All right.
Well, Steve likes to walk, but I'm more. There's also times there. Well, I'm asking because there's also times. Honestly, Steve needs to have his truck down there too.
Right.
It's it's.
Yeah. I guess, 1 second. All I'm saying, Aaron, is, whatever the language is, I think we can affect exactly what you're saying. I don't care what the language says.
Yeah.
I think we're playing with something that's not is not as big a deal as you feel it is. I really do. But let me ask from Mr. Joe. Just raise your hand.
Dominic Joya, Camden Harbor Cruises.
Residency
in Camden. Yep. So I know, when we did the Park and Pass meeting, I talked about, inclement weather, how I would usually give my pass to my employee and stuff like that. So we were kind of hoping that, and I said, what do I do then? And then I think, Bob, you mentioned that, hey, we can talk about this again later on and possibly get up a little, order some sort of tent or something or whatever. And I was kind of just laying back on that because I was kind of hoping that this could pass and we'd be, just kind of treated like everyone else in town. Because then what I was thinking was, well, on rainy days, the parking lot's not full. Why couldn't my ticket seller on a rainy day just sit in their car in between and I'll pay whatever ticket it is for that day? I mean, that's kind of where, and But the way it's written now, then I could get penalized for that as far as losing my license and all that stuff. So that's why, one of the reasons I was kind of hoping that we could just kind of be on level playing grounds.
I don't think we should go as far as removing licenses.
Right, but
That's
I know,
way
but
too far.
that was always a threat in the past, that if that's what I told our employees, that, hey, we can lose our Daystar license if you get caught parking down here.
Good reason, yep.
Yeah, that's what we always told everyone, just so it was.
Last comment, Allison, you want to make one more comment?
Anyways.
Well, I mean, I think that I'm a little surprised to hear there hasn't been any conversation about some of those things that we
I agree.
talked about, because there actually has. I mean, just a few weeks ago, down on the public landing with Steve, I don't know if you wanted to chime in here, but there was some discussion about with the aquarium that is being proposed by the group there, and some ideas about a couple parking spots there being, we were looking at where the current sort of lockers are and thinking, how could we expand that? Is there a way to incorporate that into this aquarium that C is going to be doing? Can we have there's been requests for bike racks. So there was sort of just this initial meeting of like, hey, is there, we talked about this with the day sailors. We know there's desire for there to be a water fountain that's easier to see down the public landing. There was actually a really great article or letter to the editor in the Camden Herald that was just all about lockers for the day sailors, which, so I do think that maybe it hasn't come to you yet, but there has been thinking there, and I would love for there to be a place there that just out of the rain too. And I think a lot of people would, so it shouldn't be that hard just to come up with some kind of a thing that, I don't know.
Well, I totally agree with that. I'm disappointed that we talk about these things and it doesn't go anywhere. That's frustrating to me, too. I would like to believe that we have a partnership. I'd like to believe that we turn to whatever we approve or don't approve tonight, that we have a partnership that says you're going to discourage employees from parking there, except for, I don't need words to tell you guys that's what I feel. And that's my only point. It's just, I get your point about the ordinance and stuff, but I don't care which words we approve or disapprove tonight. That's what I feel. And I think that's the way we should proceed. I think we're spending way too much time on wording of ordinances and that kind of thing. If you talk about the partnership, I think we have that. Again, I mentioned the last meeting we had. We tried to work real hard with you all when we had a pandemic going on and tried to relieve some pain, especially for the windjammers and you all too. And that was all part of what we talked about. We haven't raised your fees because there was a concern about that, if you recall, back when we were doing these licenses. So I think we have a partnership. I think we're spending too much time discussing the words. I don't care which way the words go.
There is a motion.
There is a motion and no any further discussion. If not, all those in favor.
It hasn't been seconded.
Oh, yeah.
No,
Sophie did.
I seconded. We're in the
Sophie
discussion.
seconded. All those in favor. Oh, so now you can't park anywhere.
It's like, what did we vote on? Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank Aaron, and all the rest of your crew. Keep the communication coming. If you see a mechanism to protect the employees, we're all trying to save parking spaces. You all know that. If it's something we can do, let us help you, and we'll put some fuel in the fire in what we need to do as a town to accomplish that. Thank you. Thank you.
Just one thing, I think the important thing is, I think they understand, the more people that come down and have parking and discover that the day sailors are there, they will get better business. They need people to circulate through there, and they understand that.
Yep. All right, I have to move onward to reports. Allison. No, that's Audra over there. Good night. Audra, do you have any reports you'd like to make?
You're going to hear plenty from me later.
Me too.
Just the discussion items.
What?
Number 5.
Oh, I'm sorry. Discussion item. Moratorium for discussion of whether moratorium for piers, docks, floats in the outer harbor.
Outer harbor, coastal harbor.
I have a question for Jeremy. I remember
Sorry about that.
I think in the planning board meeting, at some point, I remember somebody saying that the pier we just voted on last week or 2 weeks ago was last or almost the last available slot per our ordinances that could be put in the harbor. Is that true?
I don't want to say that. I don't want to agree with that necessarily. I think that there's the ability for one more.
Jeremy,
Gentlemen, excuse
can
me.
you-
I wouldn't get into
Guys,
that
if
at
you,
all.
Aaron,
if you need to speak, can you?
Aaron,
Outside?
outside.
We're talking about the harbor, though.
Yeah, you can say if you want to listen.
Yeah, I
Just
mean,
kidding.
Mark,
I mean,
I'd have
no,
to.
not kidding.
I'd
Cheers.
really have to look at it again. I think that there's one more potentially that can get in there, a pier, to up the coast from up into the harbor from that where that last one was permitted. But I'd have to.
Just curious.
Yeah, I'd have to look at the numbers and measure it all, but
There's probably not a lot, but I don't think it's zero.
yeah, I think there was one. I mean, that, as I recall, there's one possible, because you look at the, I have the ordinance, the harbor ordinance, I don't know by heart.
What?
But there is a stopping period.
Yep.
None can go beyond a certain point, and we're very close to that point.
Right.
But we disagree. There was, remember the thing
Criterion?
with that other, we went through a lot of round and round about whether a gangway pinned to ledge attached to a mooring float constituted a pier or not.
Correct.
And we agreed that, you know.
The answer is it doesn't constitute a pier, breakwater, or wharf, but it does constitute a structure.
Or float.
So we're trying to, the idea would be to kind of try to deal with some of this.
Well, I think that's the purpose of the moratorium, is to look at, if we do it, it would be to give us some time to take a look at the elements of these definitions in the private sector. I'm sorry, in the residential sector, which is where most of these piers, docks, floats, and blah, blah, we're
In the
talking
outer
about.
harbor there.
In the outer harbor, yes. And that's what it would be for.
One other question?
Yes, sir.
Would a moratorium affect what the ship? Lyman Morse would be
Not
doing?
if we limit it to residential.
Okay.
They're already not able to, they need an ordinance change to be able to do what they
Yeah,
would want to do.
and they're inner harbor and outer harbor
They work
both.
on an ordinance change.
I mean,
Jeremy,
keep in mind that a moratorium, you get 180 days to work on to fix the issues, right? And then you got to fix them, and you got to work on that over that 180 days to come up with amendments that address the concerns that you had that brought the moratorium into being, or the moratorium goes away.
Right.
If you can't get there in the 180 days, then you do another extension of that moratorium for 180 days.
Correct.
I will say Lyman Morse is, I know they've been slowed by, have a lot going on over it, obviously over there. Their project is not done, and they are still hopeful that project moves forward, and they are hopeful that they will have ordinance amendments in place for November to go to voters.
Right, but we're talking about residential here.
If that's the case.
In my mind.
Let's be clear that,
Yeah.
We need to be very, very clear that, well, this is just me speaking, not the rest
You
of the
need
board.
to be
but-
careful, and I'd defer to Bill, but I think you need to be careful on, I think you need to craft it in such a way that it may not be so black and white as a residential versus non-residential piers. I think you need to find the area in the harbor that you are concerned about and craft your moratorium language for that area.
Let's make it simple.
You see what I'm trying to say?
Jeremy, it's simple. I personally don't feel we should do anything that prohibits the Lyman Morse project from proceeding through the process.
I
So
understand.
however you define it, the question is the board supportive of drafting some moratorium language for consideration for a ballot in June, ballot November, whatever, but that's the purpose of this discussion, because we don't have that language in front of us, but I believe that's easily defined.
Right, I just wanted to be clear, I don't think you can have it be commercial versus residential.
Yeah, I
I think we
understand.
need to be more focused on an area that
I
you're
understand.
concerned about.
Yeah, it's like, again, the criterion, as long as it doesn't impact the Lyman Morse project, the rest of the harbor, we can certainly consider the moratorium.
Okay.
Or wherever the areas are.
Outer harbor area.
Appropriate
This is
areas.
a discussion item, we don't vote on this, right?
No, we're not going to vote on, but if the board is generally supportive, we can draft language. And by the way, if you draft language for a moratorium, it still can be voted down by the board, of course.
What about the voters? The voters have to approve them.
They do, this has to go to ballot. This has to go to ballot. Allison?
So, I mean, really, in bringing this up, it's, for me, nothing more than following up on a lot of work that was done by town committees just a few years ago. This is an article from 2015 where the Harbor Committee and the Planning Board, through an extensive process, proposed that there be a ban on any new residential piers in the Outer Harbor. They went through a lengthy process, people whose names you would recognize. Both of those boards felt, for various reasons, that it just wasn't in the town's best interest to have more of these private residential piers, because so few people use them. They infringe on public space. There aren't, at that time, they identified, I think it was like 4 more places that they thought would be likely candidates. But in many cases, what's happened is that there are places that never would have seemed like a likely location for a pier or for like a long ramp or this or that. They're deciding to do it, even if their boat can't be on it, all the time. So we're seeing more. What happened when the Planning Board and the Harbor Committee suggested this to the Select Board is it was a split vote, 3-2. And so it was one Select Board member at the time that prevented this from going to voters. To me, this is just a perfect...
The actual change is going to voters.
Right, they took that part out. And to me, because it's public space, it's just one of those perfect things to give voters an opportunity to weigh in on. Do you want more of these or not? And sometimes people say, no, I don't want to infringe on property rights at all.
Right.
And sometimes people say, no, we feel like, public property is getting taken over too much. So I think it's a good opportunity. And also the Sherman's Cove quasi-ramp structure situation. We need to stop more of that from happening so that we can look at what the implications are. Also, with sea level rise right now, we have a situation where we're forcing people to build. If they do build, they're building it below the level that we know to be, high tide and storm surge. So we can't responsibly continue to do that.
The big question I have, Jeremy and Audra, is really to you two, is that this is March 15th. We have a stack of stuff still facing us for budget warrant and blah, blah, blah. Can we accomplish this in this time period if we want to get something to the June ballot?
This is easy language.
You keep hearing that. Everything's easy until it takes hours to do it.
Yeah, and then we have 17 easy things.
Yeah, we have 42 easy things on our
All
priority
about
list.
timing, and it's possible.
Everything's possible. I'm just asking for workload.
The language for something is not tough to do. I think craft the area that we want to, have the moratorium addressed, that's pretty easy to do.
This principally goes through legal, Bill. Well, this really goes through legal more than anything, as a moratorium would fly or not. Is this, in your view, something that would be difficult to craft in the time period we have and get approved?
I don't think so, but keep in mind that there's nothing magical about this going on the June warrant. It may be if you're feeling very crunched between now and April 12th.
12th, yeah. 12th. Well, April 5th is a board meeting, but April 12th, I believe, 12th is the deadline for warrant.
More language.
Exactly. We would have to have, if it wasn't the 5th, one more meeting. We have 2 actually, next Monday and the 5th, April 5th. Go ahead, Bill.
So what I was going to say is there's nothing that says you can't adopt the moratorium through a special town meeting.
Right.
With some 7 days notice, which means you could adopt it earlier than June. It just, you wouldn't feel the crunch right now in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, that's my point.
That may be the simplest way to address it is don't get crunched, give yourself some time and do it as a special town meeting.
That's the only
opportunity to ask a larger group of people. I think it would be a helpful gauge as to public sentiment.
You mean ballot or special town meeting?
Yeah, on the ballot, because it's only a moratorium, and it's not, if it's, the language isn't perfect, it's, it can be challenged, everything can be challenged, but I
I
don't
think,
know, it
all
just
right,
seems
let's-
fairly simple to take the language from the Harbor Committee. And
We have a plan.
Yeah, I think so. The plan should be to develop some language for moratorium for whatever days.
We'll work with Bill and get language done, I think, by the end of the week.
And if we hit any bumps, we'll deal with when they come. But it should be focused on, as we've already discussed, on the private side, whatever words you're using, how you define that, and not getting in the way of Lyman Morse, and we'll see where it goes, because we have a little bit of time left. I hear the
We'll
board.
get the language done, and we'll get it to Janice and Audra.
I hear the board going like this, so, but that makes a lot of noise when they do that.
Agreed.
But that's what we'll do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to my statement. Town manager bypassed. Select board. Sophie.
No.
Marco.
Oh, yeah. Let's see here. Let me look at it. Couple things. Last Friday night, I went to one of the, I hadn't been to an Opera House event in a while, and I went to see Chris Ross, who's an amazing singer-songwriter, and I got to hear the changes that the federal funds that were given to the Opera House because of COVID, they've used a lot of those to upgrade sound and video, and the sound was as good as I've ever heard in an auditorium. It's a perfect auditorium for sound anyway, and the new pieces they put in, it was just crystal clear. It was such a pleasure to attend a concert at the Opera House. So I recommend. There's stuff going on almost every week or every month. I can't recommend. If you haven't been there in a while, please go. One other thing I mentioned, again, I just want to remind people, if you need help with your oil bill, electric bill, please contact the town. We can help. And I think that's important. And I would like to request that the news people that are watching this meeting put that out there so that people know that the help is available, because it's a tough time right now. And lastly, I'd like to thank a gentleman who's not here anymore, Bruce, who's been our tech person for a while. Janice is taking over tonight. And one of the things I've been looking at is we've had some difficulties technologically coordinating. Allison's doing a lot of the work. I'd like to see if we could move forward, and when we get a new replacement for Bruce, that we incorporate that person's ability to run all the technical stuff, so Allison's not having to stop and take her mind off the board, so we can have a little smoother operation.
Thanks, Mark.
I don't know if that person's going to be able to follow Bob saying which page and all that stuff. That's a special skill that
That's a good point.
follow along in the select board.
Ms. McCullough, go ahead.
I think everybody's heard enough.
I think everybody's, no, that's never enough.
You're like, yeah, I think so.
No, I just think the hour's getting late, and
Yeah.
there's lots of things to talk about, but we need to move on. And I would request a motion to leave the select board meeting and go into executive session under MRSA 4056 C and E.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn as a select board and move into executive session for MRSA 4056E, legal rights and duties.
And 406C, which we approved, Mark, 4056C, which is contract negotiations.
And 4056C, which is contract negotiations.
Thank you.
A second.
Motion made and seconded. Any comments? All those in favor? Okay, Janice, thank you. We could.